She's dying in labor. Billionaire CEO must choose between ex-wife and twins. Save the babies, Adrian. You never cared about me, at least care about them. Her voice shattered like glass against the sterile walls of the operating room. The billionaire who once silenced boardrooms with a glance now stood paralyzed, his designer suit soaked with sweat, staring at the woman he once abandoned. Isabella's body convulsed on the table, doctors shouting, machines shrieking, the scalpel gleaming like the edge of fate. Was this birth or punishment? Because what she carried inside her was more than fragile life. It was his bloodline, his redemption, his last chance at love. And as her scream echoed, the question that ripped through him was merciless. Would he save the woman he betrayed, or the 3 lives waiting to be born? My beautiful family, I just want to take a moment to thank God for each of you. Through all the trials and pauses, you've stood by me, and your love has been a light in my journey. Tonight, I pray that the same love you've shown me returns to you 100-fold. May your homes be filled with peace, your hearts with joy, and your paths with grace. If you feel blessed to be part of this family, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, so I can keep lifting you up in prayer. And by God's mercy, tomorrow we'll meet again with another story just as powerful as this one. Amen. He was a man described in headlines, the Iron Wolf of Wall Street, the relentless visionary, the billion-dollar brain. To the world, Adrian Blackwell was untouchable, a self-made millionaire CEO who had clawed his way from the dust of poverty into the shimmering penthouses of the city. Every boardroom he entered bent to his will, every market shift seemed to follow his hand. His voice could raise stock prices. His silence could ruin entire corporations. Yet for all his victories, there was a silence that even his billions could not fill. At night, in his penthouse of glass and steel, he would often find himself standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the city like a king surveying a kingdom, and realizing it was a kingdom he ruled alone. There had been a time when it wasn't that way. Her name was Isabella Hart. She had walked into his life before the world knew his name, back when he was still chasing investors with trembling hands and relentless hunger. Isabella was sunlight in human form, bright where he was brooding, soft where he was hardened. She had a laugh that turned his edges into curves, and eyes that could cut through all the armor he wore. They met at a fundraiser neither of them wanted to attend. He was there to charm donors. She was there because a friend dragged her along. Somehow, between champagne flutes and sharp exchanges, she saw through him. "You're not as cold as you pretend," she told him, and it disarmed him more than any corporate rival ever had. Their love was a storm. Fast, fierce, consuming. Within a year, he married her. Against his own vow to never show weakness, he led her into every hidden chamber of his heart. They built a life together, nights in small apartments where they dreamed aloud, mornings of coffee and promises whispered across pillows. For a time, success was something they chased side by side, hands clasped, hearts aligned. But storms burn out as quickly as they ignite. As Adrian's empire grew, so did the distance between them. Board meetings stretched into endless nights. Phone calls went unanswered. Isabella had always believed in his dreams, but somewhere between IPO launches and billion-dollar contracts, she realized she had lost him. Their fights were not about money, never about luxury. He gave her everything but the one thing she wanted most, his presence. She wanted a husband. What she had was a CEO. The final fracture came on a night she had rehearsed for weeks. She had told him she was pregnant. She had expected shock, maybe even joy. What she got instead was a hollow nod as he packed for another international meeting. "You don't understand, Adrian," she whispered, tears stinging. "I need you here. We need you here." "I'm doing this for us," he'd said coldly, slipping on his suit jacket. "No," she replied, voice trembling. "You're doing this for you." The silence that followed was the kind that killed love. By the time she miscarried a month later, he hadn't even been in the country. The grief swallowed her whole, and the distance between them became an abyss neither dared cross. Divorce papers followed soon after, clean and cold as a business transaction. Adrian signed them without a word. 4 years afterward, he buried himself in his empire. He expanded, conquered, and built his name into legend. But in the deepest hours of the night, when the city lights dimmed and silence pressed in, he remembered her voice, the crack in it, the way she once said his name like it was both a prayer and a curse. Isabella, on the other hand, had walked away carrying scars deeper than anyone could see. She rebuilt herself in fragments, teaching, working quietly, living far from the glittering circles of wealth. Yet no matter how she tried to erase him from her heart, pieces of Adrian remained like stubborn echoes. They had become ghosts in each other's lives. Until the day fate decided ghosts were not enough. It began with a phone call. Adrian was in a board meeting, a merger hanging on his every word, when his assistant rushed in pale-faced. He almost dismissed it. Nothing outweighed billions on the line, but something in her expression froze him. "Sir, it's your ex-wife. She's in labor. Triplets. The doctors say she might not make it." The pen slipped from his hand. The merger dissolved into meaningless noise. For the first time in years, Adrian Blackwell's world spun out of his control. And for the first time in years, Isabella was the only thing that mattered. If you were Adrian, standing at the peak of success but suddenly dragged back into the life of the woman you once loved, would you rush to her side, or stay away to protect yourself from old wounds? Comment below with what your heart would choose. Adrian Blackwell's life was measured in numbers. Numbers on stock tickers, numbers in contracts, numbers in his bank accounts that grew like an unending tide. To the outside world, he was the embodiment of success, 38 years old, self-made, and the ruthless CEO of Blackwell Enterprises, a conglomerate that controlled everything from tech startups to luxury real estate. That morning, the skyline glared at him through the tinted glass of his corner office. The city bowed to him in silence, traffic pulsing below like obedient veins, cranes stretching over buildings that his money had raised. Adrian sat behind a mahogany desk large enough to be a battlefield, his tailored suit unwrinkled, his tie a perfect knot. A single glance from him kept a boardroom silent. One sharp word could make men twice his age shrink. But inside, he was exhausted. He never showed it. His jaw remained set, his eyes cool, his voice smooth as iron. Yet beneath the polish was a gnawing emptiness, the kind that wealth never cured. He knew it best in moments like this, when his meetings were done, the deal signed, and silence filled the vast office. He had everything. He had nothing. A knock broke the quiet. "Sir," his assistant Daniel murmured as he slipped in. "The French investors are on the line." Adrian nodded, slipping the mask back on. The world would never see his cracks. While Adrian spoke in boardrooms high above the world, Isabella Hart lived closer to the ground, literally and figuratively. Her apartment was modest, its walls painted in soft pastels, the air faint with lavender. Her days were simple, teaching at a local community center, sketching in the quiet hours, preparing for the children she carried within her. Children she never expected to have. She sat by the window that morning, her hand resting over her swollen belly. Triplets. The word itself had stunned her when the doctor first whispered it, as though life had decided to give her both a miracle and a burden all at once. Her pregnancy was high risk. Every doctor's visit came with warnings layered in professional tones. She should have been on strict bed rest, but Isabella was too stubborn for stillness. She wanted to feel alive, even as her body waged war against itself. Sometimes, when the quiet was too loud, she wondered if fate was mocking her. To carry not one but 3 lives after losing her first pregnancy all those years ago, was this redemption or cruelty? She thought of Adrian then, though she hated herself for it. She imagined his face when he'd hear. Would he care? Would he even show up? He had always cared more for empires than for family. Her hand trembled slightly against her belly. "Don't you worry," she whispered to the little lives inside her. "I'll fight for you. I won't let go, not again." But in the shadows of her mind, fear whispered back, "What if you don't survive this time?" Adrian's day unfolded with precision. Contracts signed. Lunch with senators. A press conference where he smiled on cue. Everything calculated, every step part of a larger design. He lived in a fortress of order, untouched by chaos. Isabella's day unfolded with struggle. Her breaths were shallow, her ankles swollen, her body heavy with both life and risk. She lived on the raw edge of uncertainty, praying through contractions that came too soon. 2 worlds moving parallel, separated by pride, distance, and time. Yet fate was already tightening its grip, pulling them toward the collision neither expected. Late afternoon. Adrian was in his boardroom, a 30-foot table gleaming under recessed lights. Screens projected numbers in cold blue. He leaned forward, commanding, precise. Investors hung on his words. And then the door burst open. It wasn't Daniel's usual calm knock. It was urgency, raw and unpolished. His assistant's face was pale, his eyes wide. "Sir," his voice broke. "It's your ex-wife." Adrian's brow furrowed. He didn't move, not yet. "What about her?" "She's in labor. Complications." It's bad, sir. They don't think she'll make it unless—" Daniel hesitated, the words failing him. "Unless someone decides." The room went still. Screens glowed silently. Investors shifted uncomfortably. But Adrian didn't hear them anymore. He stood slowly, his chair scraping against the polished floor, the air suddenly thinner. 4 years, he had built walls, trained himself not to think of her. But in that single sentence, the fortress cracked. He saw her again, her eyes wet with betrayal, her voice trembling when she whispered goodbye. And now, the thought of her lying pale on a hospital bed, fighting for her life. His hand tightened on the edge of the table until his knuckles went white. "Clear my schedule," he said hoarsely. "But sir, the investors." "I said clear it." For the first time in a decade, Adrian Blackwell walked out of a meeting unfinished. Meanwhile, Isabella's world blurred into white lights and frantic voices. Her contractions came like waves tearing her apart, doctors rushing, nurses adjusting machines. Beeping monitors echoed in rhythm with her racing heart. Her pressures dropping. "We're losing the baby's heartbeats. We need consent. Someone has to choose." Isabella tried to speak, but her breath caught, her vision tunneling. She clung to one thought, one prayer. Not again. Please, not again. Her body was a battlefield. And she was losing. Adrian's car cut through the city like a blade. Sirens seemed to echo in his ears though there were none. His mind replayed fragments. Her smile, her laughter, the night they fell apart. He had thought the worst day of his life was signing those divorce papers. But nothing compared to this, the possibility of losing her forever. For the first time in years, Adrian Blackwell was afraid. And as Isabella drifted in and out of consciousness, surrounded by chaos, her lips parted in a whisper no one heard. "Adrian." If you were in Isabella's shoes, risking your own life to bring new ones into the world, would you want your ex, the man who once broke you, by your side at that moment? Comment below with what your heart says. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and despair. Adrian pushed through its sliding doors like a storm breaking glass, his tall frame cutting through the crowd of nurses, patients, and visitors. Security recognized him instantly. His name alone could buy half the building, but this wasn't business. His usual composure was gone. His eyes burned with a fire that money couldn't tame. "Adrian Blackwell?" a nurse asked, wide-eyed. "Yes," he snapped, his voice rough. "Isabella Hart. Where is she?" The nurse hesitated. Everyone knew his reputation. Cold. Unyielding. Dangerous when denied. But there was no mistaking the tremor in his tone now. She led him swiftly through sterile corridors until the sound of hurried voices and beeping machines grew louder. Adrian froze at the doorway. There she was. Isabella lay on a narrow hospital bed, her face pale against the white sheets, damp strands of hair clinging to her forehead. Wires snaked from her arms. The monitor's erratic rhythm told a story her body couldn't hide. Her swollen belly rose and fell with shallow breaths. Around her, doctors moved like frantic shadows, issuing clipped orders. Adrian's heart clenched in a way it hadn't in years. She looked fragile, breakable, so far from the fiery woman he remembered. For a moment, the empire he had built, the power he wielded, meant nothing. Isabella. The name slipped from his lips like a prayer he hadn't dared speak in years. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound. At first, confusion glazed them. Then recognition. Then fury. "You," her voice cracked, half breath, half sob. Why are you here? Adrian stepped forward, every instinct screaming to reach her. Because you're... He stopped, words faltering. Because I had to be. A doctor interrupted, snapping the fragile moment. Mr. Blackwell, we need your consent. The situation is critical. We can try to save the mother or the babies, but not both. The decision has to be made. The world spun. Adrian's gaze whipped back to Isabella, who was trembling. Her lips parted as if she had already heard the sentence in her own mind. Save the children, she whispered hoarsely. No, Adrian barked instantly, his voice echoing against the sterile walls. His fists clenched. Save her. The room stilled at the collision of their words. Isabella's chest heaved as she looked at him, rage and sorrow flickering in her fading eyes. Don't you dare, Adrian. They matter more than me. And you don't matter? His voice cracked with anger at her, at himself, at the universe. Don't say that. Don't you ever say that. She turned her face away, tears streaking down her temple. You don't get to care now. Not after you stopped caring years ago. The blow landed sharper than any business betrayal ever had. Adrian stepped closer, his shadow falling across her. His voice dropped to a raw whisper. You think I stopped caring? Isabella, I never stopped. He faltered, the words choking him. Pride and grief wrestled inside his chest. I just didn't know how to show it. The monitor beeped faster, the doctors exchanging looks of urgency. We're running out of time, one said sharply. We need an answer, now. Adrian's eyes locked on Isabella's, the years of silence between them collapsing under the weight of this single moment. He saw the woman who had once been his whole world, the woman he had lost through pride and neglect, the woman who now lay dying because life was cruel enough to force them back together in this way. And for the first time since his empire was built, Adrian Blackwell had no idea what to do. Minutes felt like hours. Doctors hovered, nurses prepped, machines wailed their relentless countdown. Adrian stood paralyzed, torn between rage, grief, and fear. Isabella's hand twitched weakly on the sheets. For a moment, she wasn't the fierce woman fighting him. She was simply a mother, desperate for her children to live, resigned to her own fate. Please, she whispered, her eyes meeting his. Let them have a chance. Adrian shook his head, stepping closer, his hand hovering above hers but never quite touching. No. Don't ask me to bury you, Isabella. Not again. I can't. His voice broke. I can't survive that twice. Her tears pooled, spilling down her face. And I can't survive knowing I let them die. The silence between them roared louder than the machines. If you were in Adrian's position, forced to choose between the woman you loved and the children she carried, what would your heart choose? Comment below. The mother or the babies? A sudden alarm blared. The doctors rushed forward. Isabella cried out in pain, her back arching, monitors spiking. Adrian reached for her hand at last, gripping it with a desperation he had never allowed himself to feel in public. Don't leave me, he whispered fiercely, his forehead nearly touching hers. Not like this. Not when I've just found you again. Isabella's grip tightened weakly. Adrian. Her voice trailed, swallowed by the noise around them. And then the doctors shouted, We're losing her. Adrian's world shattered. Chaos erupted. Doctors swarmed Isabella's bed as alarms wailed. One shouted numbers, another adjusted her fore-drip, another pressed firm against her abdomen as though they could will the babies back into safety. Nurses scrambled for equipment, their faces set with grim determination. Adrian stood frozen for a heartbeat, watching the life drain from Isabella's face. Then something inside him broke. No boardroom training, no billion-dollar decision had ever prepared him for this moment. He shoved forward, his voice thundering through the chaos. Do something. His command cracked like a whip. Save her. Mr. Blackwell, please, step back. A doctor barked. No. Adrian's chest heaved as he loomed over Isabella, gripping her hand so tightly it was almost painful. His mask of control was gone, replaced by raw desperation. "I won't stand here while you let her die." Isabella's eyes fluttered half open. Her lips moved faintly. He bent low, straining to catch the whisper through the storm. Don't fight them, Adrian," she breathed weakly. "Let them save the babies." Her words pierced him deeper than any dagger. He shook his head violently. "No. You listen to me. I can build another empire, I can lose everything I've worked for, but I cannot lose you again. Do you hear me? I won't." Tears slipped down her cheeks. Her free hand trembled against his wrist. "You already lost me once." The accusation wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. It was the truth neither had spoken since the divorce, now bleeding out between them as her body fought for breath. Adrian's throat tightened. His voice lowered, trembling. "I never stopped loving you. Not for a second. I was just too much of a coward to admit it." Her eyes widened faintly. Shock, pain, perhaps the faint flicker of something else. But the monitors screamed louder, drowning the moment. As doctors worked, Adrian's mind spiraled into memories he had buried under glass towers and endless contracts. The night of her miscarriage. The hollow sound of her crying when he wasn't there. The day the papers arrived, and he signed them without even fighting for her. And then, a truth he had never told her. He had known about the miscarriage. Daniel had called him in Europe. Adrian had returned, hours too late, only to find her asleep in a hospital bed, tubes in her arms. He had stood there, broken, wanting to beg her forgiveness, but pride and fear of rejection had kept him rooted in silence. When she woke, he left before she saw him. She never knew. Now, watching her slip away, he felt the weight of that choice suffocate him. "I should have been there," he choked out, his forehead pressing against her damp hand. "That night, I came. I saw you. I left because I thought you'd hate me. God, Isabella, I've lived every day since wishing I had stayed." Her eyes glistened with tears, a faint sob escaping her lips. But then her body convulsed, her scream muffled by the oxygen mask as doctors shouted over her. "Mr. Blackwell, we need your answer now," the lead doctor snapped, sweat beading his brow. "If we try to save her, the baby's chances plummet. If we focus on the babies, we may lose her. Decide." The words slammed into Adrian like bullets. His heart raced, his palms shook, his mind screamed. Pride, logic, empire, all useless here. All that mattered was love, and it was tearing him in two. He looked at Isabella. Her eyes, glassy with pain, pleaded. Not for herself, but for the children. She mouthed, barely audible, "Save them." Adrian's jaw locked, his tears finally spilling. "No. I can't lose you. Not again." The doctor cursed under his breath, then signed the consent forms. "Now." Adrian seized the clipboard, his hand trembling as he scrawled his signature. As the doctors rushed Isabella toward the operating theater, Adrian walked beside her bed, refusing to let go of her hand. His voice was hoarse, his mask completely shattered. "Listen to me," he whispered fiercely. "If you go, I will go with you. Do you understand? I can't live in a world without you again." Her lips trembled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Adrian." He bent closer, his voice breaking. "I swear to you, Isabella, if I have to burn everything I've built, give up every dollar, every deal, I'll do it. Just don't leave me. Please." Her eyes closed, her hand loosening in his. The doors swung shut between them. Adrian stood in the hall, fists trembling, heart breaking, staring at the empty corridor. For the first time in his life, Adrian Blackwell, the man who controlled everything, realized he controlled nothing at all. The doors slammed shut with a metallic clang, sealing Isabella behind sterile walls and surgical masks. Adrian stood frozen in the corridor, his chest heaving, the echo of her last whisper still etched into him. The corridor smelled faintly of bleach, buzzing with nurses hurrying past, but for him the world had shrunk to that one door. He was a man who commanded markets, who could bend governments with donations and ruin competitors with a single press release. Yet here, in the white corridors of this hospital, he was powerless. And for Adrian Blackwell, powerlessness was terror. He dropped into one of the waiting room chairs, his elbows on his knees, his hands pressed into his face. For a moment, he felt like the boy he had once been, the one who grew up on the edge of hunger, who swore he'd never be weak again. Now weakness was swallowing him whole. Minutes bled into hours. The clock ticked mockingly, each second a reminder that somewhere beyond the wall, Isabella's life, and the lives of the 3 children he hadn't even known were his, hung in the balance. The quiet didn't last. The waiting room filled with whispers and clicks of cameras as word spread. Adrian hadn't noticed at first, but reporters had caught the scent of tragedy. A billionaire CEO, his ex-wife, and unborn triplets, that was a story too irresistible. Paparazzi lenses pressed against the glass doors, reporters murmured into phones. Is it true? Will he choose the babies over her? Can you imagine? The empire without a successor. The world's coldest CEO, crying in a waiting room. Adrian's fists tightened until his knuckles turned white. He stood abruptly, his shadow looming large across the room, his voice thundering. Get out. The reporters froze. I said get out. His roar shook the walls. Security rushed in, sweeping them away, but the whispers lingered in the back of his mind. Cold. Ruthless. Uncaring. That's how the world saw him. But none of them knew the truth. None of them knew the man who sat there, heart-tearing, praying for one woman's survival. As the last of the reporters scattered, a figure appeared at the edge of the waiting room. An older woman, her face lined with age but her eyes sharp with grief. Margaret Hart, Isabella's mother. Adrian stiffened. He hadn't seen her since the divorce. You, she said, her voice dripping with venom. Of course you're here. Like a vulture circling. Adrian swallowed the instinct to defend himself. I'm here for Isabella. Margaret's laugh was bitter. Isabella? The daughter you abandoned? The wife you buried under contracts and headlines until she broke. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. If she dies today, Adrian Blackwell, it's on your hands. The words sliced him open. He wanted to protest, to tell her she didn't know the truth, that he had never stopped loving her daughter. But the weight of guilt silenced him. Instead, he whispered, I won't let her die. Margaret scoffed. You don't have that power. Not this time. Her words lingered like poison. Silence settled again once Margaret left. Adrian sat alone, his mind racing. He thought of Isabella's swollen belly, of her whispers begging to save the children. Why hadn't she told him? Why had she carried this alone? A soft voice broke his spiral. Mr. Blackwell? He turned. A young nurse stood at the doorway, hesitant. I shouldn't be telling you this, but she didn't want you to know. Adrian's brow furrowed. Didn't want me to know what? The nurse bit her lip. About the pregnancy. She only told her mother and a close friend. She was afraid you'd think the babies were a burden. She said you'd never choose them over your empire. The words hit him like a blow to the chest. His knees weakened. She thought he broke off, unable to finish. His voice dropped to a whisper. She thought I wouldn't want them? The nurse nodded reluctantly. She was protecting them. Protecting herself. Adrian sank back into the chair, his head in his hands. For the first time in years, tears slipped freely down his face. Isabella had loved him enough once to carry his dream beside him. Now she had loved these children enough to carry them without him. And through it all, she had believed he didn't care. The pain was unbearable. For the first time in decades, Adrian prayed. Not to money, not to power, but to whatever force held the strings of fate. Take everything I have. Take it all. Just let her live. Let them live. Please. His voice cracked, shattering the silence. And as he sat there, broken in a way no rival had ever broken him, the surgical doors suddenly swung open. A doctor emerged, his face grim, his gloves bloodied. Mr. Blackwell, he said heavily, you need to prepare yourself. The doctor's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the heaviness of what he carried. "Mr. Blackwell," he said, pulling off his gloves. "We've stabilized her for the moment, but her condition is critical. She's lost far too much blood." Adrian's heart hammered. His throat felt raw as he asked, "What are you saying?" The doctor inhaled, choosing his words carefully. "We can focus on saving Isabella, but it means the babies may not survive. All three of them." His gaze dropped for a moment before rising again. "Or, we can prioritize the babies. We might deliver them, keep them alive. But her chances will fall dramatically." The words ripped through the room like shrapnel. Adrian stumbled back a step, as though the floor had given way beneath him. The beeping of distant machines, the murmur of footsteps, the sterile buzz of fluorescent lights, it all blurred into a suffocating silence. The doctor's words circled like vultures. Isabella or the babies? The babies or Isabella? "No," Adrian whispered. His chest rose and fell too quickly, panic clawing at him. "There has to be another way. She's strong. She'll fight." The doctor's eyes softened. "I wish I could tell you that. But this isn't about strength, it's about what the body can endure. She's at her limit." Before Adrian could respond, Margaret Hart's voice cut through the waiting room. "You'll choose her," she spat, stepping forward, eyes blazing. "Of course you will." The almighty Adrian Blackwell, never thinking beyond himself. "You'll let her children die because you can't bear to lose your possession." Adrian turned to her sharply, his jaw tightening. "Possession? Isabella was never." His voice broke. He steadied it. "She's not something I own. She's the woman I love." Margaret laughed bitterly. "Love? Don't you dare use that word. Love would have meant being there when she cried herself to sleep, when she begged for your time, when she asked you to choose her over your empire. And now look where we are. One last choice, Adrian. Let's see if you finally learn what love actually means." Her words cut him deeper than she could know. The doctor spoke again, his tone professional but heavy. "Mr. Blackwell, I need your answer soon. Every minute counts." Adrian's mind reeled. His empire had been built on decisions. Swift, ruthless, precise. He'd never hesitated when firing a partner, dismantling a rival, acquiring a billion-dollar company overnight. Yet this choice, this was different. It wasn't a company. It wasn't money. It was Isabella. And three tiny lives he had never met, but who carried his blood. He remembered Isabella's whisper before the doors closed. "Save them." Her eyes had pleaded, her voice trembling, her hand gripping his. The children. She wanted the children saved. But how could he let her go? Adrian's chest ached with the memory of their divorce. The cold words. The slammed doors. Her broken voice said, "You'll never fight for me, Adrian. You'll always fight for your empire instead." And now, wasn't she right? If he chose her, he'd betray her final wish. If he chose the babies, he'd live with her absence haunting him forever. He pressed both hands to his head, his voice ragged. Damn it all." Margaret's voice was steady now, laced with quiet fury. "Do you know what she told me, Adrian? She said if she didn't make it, she wanted her children to grow up never knowing the weight of your coldness. She wanted them to be free of your shadow." Adrian's stomach twisted violently. He staggered a step back, staring at her as if struck. She said that. Margaret's silence was enough. The air seemed to collapse in on him. For the first time in his life, Adrian Blackwell, the man untouchable, unshakable, feared across continents, fell to his knees in the middle of a hospital waiting room. His chest heaved, his fists slammed into the tiled floor. "I can't lose her," he choked. "I can't lose them. Don't make me choose." But no one could answer. The silence pressed down like a tomb. The doctor knelt slightly, his voice calm but firm. "Mr. Blackwell, time is slipping. If we wait much longer, we could lose them all. I need your decision." Adrian's vision blurred. He thought of Isabella's laugh, soft and rare. He thought of the way she used to rest her head on his shoulder during long nights. He thought of her whisper in that hallway, "Save them." And in the hollow of his chest, he felt it, the cruel truth that love wasn't about what he wanted. It was about what she asked of him. His lips trembled as he whispered, "Save the babies." The words scraped his throat raw. The doctor nodded grimly, turning on his heel, vanishing behind the swinging doors. Adrian sat frozen, his soul cracking. The weight of the choice crushed him, pressing down until every breath was a labor. Margaret, for once, said nothing. She only stared at him with unreadable eyes. The waiting room clock ticked on. Each second now was a countdown, not just to the fate of Isabella and the babies, but to the man Adrian would become when the doors opened again. The double doors slammed shut behind the doctor, sealing Isabella and the triplets away in a sterile battlefield Adrian could not enter. The muffled hum of machines, the sharp commands of nurses, the shuffle of hurried steps, all drifted faintly from the other side, taunting him. The waiting room suddenly felt cavernous, as though the walls had pulled back, leaving him adrift in a sea of silence. Adrian stood frozen for a moment before sinking into the hard vinyl chair, elbows on his knees, hands trembling despite his desperate attempts to steal them. Time fractured. Seconds stretched into minutes, minutes into eternities. The clock on the far wall ticked in measured cruelty, each sound louder than the last. Every tick whispered, "You might lose her. You might lose them." His mind clawed for distractions, but every attempt only pulled him deeper into the storm. He pictured Isabella's body, fragile under harsh lights, doctors working furiously to deliver life while death lingered at the edges. He pictured 3 impossibly small infants, their first breaths caught between survival and silence. And over all of it, he heard her whisper, "Save them." The words stabbed like glass every time they replayed. Margaret sat across from him, her hands clasped tightly, her face pale. For once, her usual barbed words were gone. Silence stretched between them, thick, suffocating. Finally, she whispered, her voice breaking, "If she dies, Adrian, if she dies, I'll never forgive you." He raised his head, eyes rimmed red, and for the first time she saw not the CEO, not the man who had stolen her sister's heart, but a broken figure unraveling. "You think I'll forgive myself?" he rasped. "You think I'll ever close my eyes again without seeing her lying on that table?" Margaret's lips trembled, but no words followed. For all her hatred, she knew the truth. Adrian's torment was already punishment enough. He closed his eyes, desperate to escape the present. Instead, memories surged, vivid and merciless. He saw Isabella on their wedding day, ivory dress clinging to her curves, her smile radiant. He saw the first apartment they'd shared, laughter echoing as they burned dinner together. He saw her tears the night she left, suitcase trembling in her hand, her voice breaking as she said, "I can't fight for us alone anymore." Each memory was a knife, and together they carved the same truth. He had loved her in silence, and now silence might take her forever. Beyond the doors, the fight raged. Doctors moved swiftly, one team battling to stabilize Isabella, another working to deliver the triplets. Each cry of command, each metallic clang of tools carried faintly into the waiting area, slicing the stillness. At one point, Adrian swore he heard it, a tiny, fragile cry. His head snapped up, breath hitching. Margaret's eyes widened too. But then silence swallowed it, leaving them unsure whether it was real or imagined. He rose abruptly, pacing the length of the waiting room like a caged predator. His hands curled into fists, unclenching, curling again. Every step was a war against the helplessness devouring him. He had always commanded outcomes, forcing the world to bend. Now, he could do nothing but wait, a spectator to the one battle that mattered most. He pressed his forehead to the cool glass of the observation window, whispering through clenched teeth. "Fight, Isabella. Please. Don't leave me like this. Don't leave me with ghosts." At last, the doors opened. A nurse in scrubs stepped out, face strained with exhaustion. Adrian nearly lunged at her, eyes wild. "Tell me," he demanded. His voice cracked. "Tell me, are they alive?" The nurse hesitated, her gaze flicking between him and Margaret. "2 of the babies have been delivered. They're alive but very weak. We're working on the third. Isabella. She's still with us, but it's fragile. Adrian's knees nearly buckled. Relief surged and collapsed into fear again. Still with us was not safe. Alive was not out of danger. The nurse gave a small nod before vanishing back inside. The doors slammed again. The waiting resumed. Margaret whispered, almost too low to hear. She'll hate you for this choice, you know. If she survives. Adrian swallowed hard, his gaze fixed on the doors. I don't care if she hates me, he whispered back. As long as she breathes to hate me. It was the most honest thing he had ever said. Hours bled into each other. Night deepened. The sterile light buzzed. Shadows grew longer. Adrian's body ached, but he couldn't move. His mind kept drifting back to one haunting possibility, that the last words he'd ever heard from Isabella had already been spoken. Save them. And he had obeyed. But would she ever forgive him? The double doors held the answer. The silence on the other side was unbearable, yet it was all he had left. If you were Isabella, lying on that table, knowing your life or your children's might be the cost, what would you want your loved one to choose? Comment below with your heart's answer. The first thing Adrian heard was not the beating of his own heart but the faint, fragile cries of newborns. It was a sound he had imagined once, years ago, when Isabella still wore his name and her laughter filled their home. Back then, he had told himself he would give her the world. But he had given her absence instead, and now those cries carried the weight of redemption and punishment both. The nurse emerged again, cradling two impossibly small bundles wrapped in hospital cloth. Their chests rose and fell in stuttering breaths, their cries weak but alive. Adrian surged to his feet, his breath catching. Margaret gasped beside him, hand to her mouth. They're alive, the nurse whispered, her voice heavy with exhaustion. They're both alive. The room tilted for Adrian. Relief surged, thick and choking, but so did terror. He wanted to hold them, to anchor himself in their existence, but his hands trembled too violently. Margaret stepped forward, her tears streaming openly. And the third? She asked, her voice a knife edge. The nurse hesitated. The third did not survive. The words cracked through the air like lightning. Margaret's knees buckled, and she pressed a fist against her chest as though to keep her heart from breaking apart. Adrian stood frozen, blood draining from his face. The nurse continued gently, the delivery was too late. The complications are too severe. We did everything possible. Adrian turned away, hand pressed against the wall, forehead bent against the cold plaster. His breath came shallow, ragged. 2 lives gained. 1 lost. And Isabella, her fate still unresolved. They were finally allowed into the neonatal unit, where the 2 survivors lay in incubators, tubes and wires encasing their fragile bodies. Adrian's chest clenched at the sight. He leaned forward, his hand hovering above the glass, fingers twitching as though yearning to touch yet too afraid to break them with his presence. They look like her, Margaret whispered hoarsely. God, they look just like her. Adrian's throat burned. He wanted to say something, but words betrayed him. All he could do was watch the rise and fall of tiny lungs, terrified that each breath might be their last. And Isabella. Where was Isabella? Hours later, the surgeon appeared. His face was grave, his shoulders heavy with the burden of news. Your wife. Ex-wife, Margaret corrected bitterly, though her voice faltered. The doctor glanced at Adrian. She's alive. But it's critical. The blood loss was extensive. We managed to stabilize her, but she's not out of danger. The next 24 hours are everything. Adrian gripped the edge of the counter, his knuckles white. Alive. Barely alive. A fragile tether keeping her between this world and the next. Can I see her? He asked, his voice a whisper. The doctor nodded, though his eyes warned. Prepare yourself. The sight of her nearly broke him. She lay in the bed, her face pale as parchment, her body dwarfed by the tangle of tubes and wires. Machines beeped steadily, keeping rhythm where her body struggled. Her lips were cracked, her lashes damp from tears shed unconsciously. Adrian sank into the chair beside her, his chest splitting open. He reached out, hesitated, then finally clasped her cold hand. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I stayed. I didn't leave this time." But she didn't stir. She didn't squeeze his hand. The silence between them was louder than any cry. Margaret lingered in the doorway, arms folded tightly as though to keep herself from collapsing. Her eyes were red, her face drawn with grief and fury. "This is your fault," she whispered harshly. "You chose the babies. And now one is gone, and she may still die. You doomed them both." Adrian's jaw clenched. He didn't look up. "She told me to save them. I did what she asked. And if she never wakes to know that?" Margaret shot back. "If she dies believing you abandoned her for them?" Her words sank like stones, but Adrian refused to answer. His chest burned with denial. He wouldn't, accept the possibility of her death. "She'll wake," he whispered fiercely, his thumb brushing over Isabella's limp fingers. "She'll wake. She has to." The night stretched endlessly. Adrian refused to move from her bedside, refusing food, refusing sleep. He sat in rigid vigil, clinging to the sound of her shallow breaths. He whispered apologies she couldn't hear, confessions he had buried for years. Please, he never thought he would speak. But still, she didn't stir. And every passing hour pressed heavier against him, his denial the only fragile shield against the truth that loomed closer. She might never return. The hospital walls had a way of swallowing time. Day and night blurred into one another, broken only by the hiss of machines and the soft padding of nurses' shoes. Adrian hadn't left Isabella's side since the doctor's verdict. His eyes were bloodshot, his tie loosened, his once impeccable suit wrinkled from days of vigil. His empire could burn, and he would not move. But the world would not wait for him. On the third morning, Margaret stormed into the room, her voice sharp as glass. "Adrian, the board has called twice. They're demanding an update. They want to know why the CEO of Hartwell Industries has gone missing." Adrian didn't flinch. His gaze stayed locked on Isabella's pale face. "Tell them I'm unavailable." Margaret's eyes blazed. "Unacceptable. The stock is sliding, investors are spooked, and the press is sniffing around. You can't ignore this. You can't." "I can," Adrian cut her off, his voice low, dangerous. He finally turned, his eyes hollow but burning. "Let it all burn, Margaret. I'm not leaving her." Margaret's lips trembled with rage. "One baby is already gone. A company at risk. And you still think you can save her? She's gone, Adrian. She's already gone." Adrian's jaw locked, his fists clenching. He didn't answer, but his silence was a fortress. Fragile, crumbling, but defiant. Later, he drifted into the neonatal ward. The two surviving babies lay in their incubators, tiny bodies rising and falling like fragile miracles. A nurse, kind-eyed and weary, approached him. "They're fighters. They'll need weeks here, maybe months. But they have a chance." Adrian pressed his palm against the glass. His chest ached. "I don't even know how to hold them," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "I've built empires, signed contracts worth billions, but I don't know how to hold my own children." The nurse's smile was soft, almost maternal. "Start small. Start with love. They don't need perfection. They need presence." Her words burrowed into him like an unwelcome truth. Presence, the very thing he had denied Isabella for years. That night, when the hospital had quieted, Adrian returned to Isabella's room. He sat heavily in the chair, head bowed against the bed. "I don't know what to do," he confessed into the silence. His voice cracked. "I don't know how to save them without you. I don't even know how to save myself." Her hand lay limp in his. He lifted it, pressing her fingers to his lips. "I chose them because you asked me to. But what if you never wake to know that? What if the last thing you believe about me is that I abandoned you again?" His chest shook with a tremor he couldn't control. Tears slipped down his face, raw and silent. Then, something. A flicker. The faintest pressure against his palm. He froze. His heart thundered in his chest. "Isabella!" he whispered, leaning closer. But the pressure faded as quickly as it came, leaving only stillness. Perhaps a spasm. Perhaps I hoped to play cruel tricks. Adrian buried his face in her sheets, clinging to denial like a drowning man clings to driftwood. "She's still here," he whispered. "She has to be." By dawn, Margaret's patience had frayed to shreds. She stormed into the room, her hair disheveled, her voice raw. "I can't watch you do this," she snapped. "Clinging to a corpse while two babies need their father alive and sane." Adrian's eyes shot to hers, wild with fury. "Don't you dare call her that. She's not coming back." Margaret screamed. Her voice cracked under the weight of grief. "She gave everything to bring them here, and now she's gone. And you're wasting what little strength you have left pretending otherwise." Adrian rose from his chair, towering over her, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. "I will not bury her while she still breathes. Not while there is a single heartbeat left in her body." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. For a moment, the fury dropped away, leaving only sorrow. "And what if she never forgives you for choosing them over her?" Adrian turned back to Isabella, his jaw trembling. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life begging her forgiveness." That night, exhaustion finally overtook him. He slumped in the chair, head against the mattress, drifting into restless sleep. Dreams came. Memories, sharp and aching. Isabella's laughter in their old home. Her eyes were bright when she told him she was pregnant the first time. His own cold words when he told her the company needed him more. He woke with a jolt, chest heaving. And in the silence, he swore he heard her whisper his name. "Adrian!" His head snapped up. Her lips hadn't moved. Her eyes were still closed. But the echo lingered, searing him with both hope and torment. The hospital room had become a cage. The steady beeping of the monitor, the cold hum of fluorescent lights, the antiseptic tang in the air, all of it gnawed at Adrian's sanity. He had not left the room in days. His hair was unkempt, his once polished shoes scuffed from pacing the floor. The mighty CEO who had stared down billion-dollar contracts now looked like a broken man clutching at ghosts. It was near midnight when Margaret reappeared. Her voice was softer this time, almost pleading. "Adrian," she whispered, lingering at the doorway. "You're killing yourself. You haven't eaten. You haven't slept properly. If you collapse, those babies will have no one." His laugh was hollow, bitter. "They have you, don't they? Isn't that what you've wanted? For me to finally fail? For me to disappear so you can swoop in as savior?" Her face hardened. "I wanted you to see reality. But you—" her voice broke. She pressed her hand to her mouth before continuing. "I loved her too, you know. Not the way you did. But she was my sister. My rival. My friend. I don't want to bury her any more than you do." Adrian's body stiffened, surprise flickering across his features. But the exhaustion buried any deeper reaction. He turned back to Isabella. "I can't let her go," he murmured. "I already let her go once, Margaret. I'm not doing it again." Hours passed in silence. Adrian sat slumped forward, Isabella's limp hand in his. His eyelids grew heavy, but when he blinked, he saw her, smiling, radiant, as she had been in their first years together. "Adrian," she said softly, her voice like a memory come alive. His chest constricted. He reached for her, tears springing to his eyes. "Isabella!" Her ghost knelt in front of him, placing a hand over his heart. "Why did you let me go before? Why didn't you fight for me then?" "I was a fool," he whispered, trembling. "Blinded by ambition. I thought love could wait. I thought you would always be there. And now?" her phantom asked, eyes glistening. He broke down, sobbing into her imagined touch. Now I'd trade everything. The company, the money, the empire. None of it matters. Just come back to me. Please. When he lifted his head again, the vision was gone. Only Isabella's still body remained, pale against the sheets. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to her hand. His tears dampened her skin. And then, faint, fragile, but real, her fingers twitched. Adrian froze, every nerve in his body sparking. Slowly, carefully, he lifted his head. Isabella. Another twitch. Stronger this time. Her eyelids fluttered, just once, before sinking back into stillness. Adrian shot to his feet, heart pounding. He slammed the call button for the nurses, his voice breaking. She moved. She moved. Damn it. She's still here. The nurses rushed in, checking monitors, shining lights into her eyes, murmuring in clipped professional tones. But Adrian barely heard them. All he knew was that he had felt it, proof, however small, that she hadn't abandoned him. His denial, mocked as delusion by everyone else, had turned into hope. Real hope. When the commotion died down, Adrian lowered himself back into the chair. He took her hand again, holding it gently, reverently. I felt you, he whispered, his voice raw. I don't care what anyone says, you're fighting. And if you're fighting, then so am I. He kissed her knuckles, lingering there as if to breathe life into her through sheer will. For the first time in days, his tears were not only grief, they were relief. If you were in Adrian's place, would you have clung to that single twitch of her hand as proof of hope, or dismissed it as chance? Tell me in the comments. How much hope is too much? Adrian had always lived with choices. He had built an empire on them, choosing which deals to risk, which competitors to crush, which men to trust and which to ruin. His life had been nothing but decisions, sharp and absolute. But here, inside the hospital, choices vanished. The doctors had made it clear, Isabella's body was still too unstable to risk moving her. Her heartbeat was fragile, her oxygen fluctuating, her recovery uncertain. She needs constant monitoring, they had told him, and familiar voices near her. Anything that roots her to life. That meant him. For the first time in his adult life, Adrian Blackwell could not buy his way out, delegate the burden, or retreat into work. He was tethered to her side. Her pale hand in his, the hum of machines filling every silence. The hospital room had transformed into a universe of its own. Days blurred into nights, nights into days. The world outside, the stock markets, the flashing cameras, the city that once worshipped him, ceased to matter. His kingdom now was a chair beside Isabella's bed, a plastic bassinet in the corner where his 3 newborns slept, and the stubborn pulse on the monitor that reminded him she was still alive. The triplets were impossibly small, fragile as glass, their tiny fists opening and closing in restless dreams. Each time Adrian looked at them, something twisted in his chest. He had built towers of steel and glass, yet he had never built anything so delicate, so terrifyingly dependent on him. One evening, a nurse placed one of the infants, the smallest of the 3, a girl, into his arms. Adrian froze, panic shooting through him. I've never, his voice cracked. I don't know how. The nurse only smiled. Then you'll learn. The baby stirred, her miniature face scrunching, and for a moment Adrian feared she would cry, exposing his incompetence. But instead, her tiny body relaxed against his chest, her breathing soft and steady. Something inside him unraveled. He held her as though she were spun of light itself, as though the weight of her was more than any empire he had ever carried. And in that quiet moment, he realized, Isabella had left him more than memories. She had left him pieces of herself, pieces that demanded he stay. Of course, Margaret's presence made everything heavier. She moved in and out of the room like a shadow, helping with the infants, speaking to the doctors, ensuring everything ran with clinical efficiency. Yet beneath her composed exterior, Adrian could feel the tension, a silent war of blame, guilt, and unspoken words. One night, when the babies were finally asleep and the ward fell quiet, Margaret broke the silence. You look like a stranger, Adrian. He glanced up, exhausted, eyes hollow. I suppose I am. The man you knew, Died with her once already. Margaret crossed her arms. And what about these children? Will you let them grow up without knowing their mother? Without knowing you? His jaw tightened. I won't fail them. Her gaze lingered on him, skeptical yet softened. You already failed her once. Don't make the same mistake twice. The words struck like a blade, but he did not answer. Instead, he turned back to Isabella, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Though unconscious, Isabella's presence was everywhere. In the soft rise and fall of her chest. In the faint twitch of her hand. In the way the babies' faces seemed to mirror hers. Adrian began speaking to her more often, not caring if anyone thought him mad. You'd laugh at me right now, he murmured one night, his hand wrapped around hers. I don't know the first thing about diapers, or feeding schedules, or soothing them when they cry. But I'm trying, because they're ours, yours and mine. And I need you to see them, to hold them. His voice cracked, and he pressed her knuckles to his lips. So fight, Isabella. Fight your way back to me. Sometimes, he swore her breathing deepened, as though she were listening. The longer he stayed, the more Adrian realized. He could not leave even if he wanted to. The doctor's orders, the baby's cries, Isabella's fragile pulse, all bound him tighter than any contract ever had. This was no longer a choice. It was destiny, shackling him to the very woman he had once let slip away. And strangely, for the first time in years, he did not resent it. The hospital became his prison and his penance. Adrian Blackwell, once hailed as a titan, now measured his hours not by closing deals but by the cries of 3 fragile voices. Each wail tore him from his thoughts, each tiny whimper pulling him back into a role he was unprepared for, father. It was near midnight when the nurse's shift ended and Margaret had stepped out to take a call. For the first time since their birth, Adrian was left alone with the 3 tiny lives. The room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of monitors, until the silence shattered. First one child cried, then another, then all 3. Their fragile voices pierced him like arrows. He froze. Boardrooms never rattled him. Billion-dollar negotiations never made him sweat. But 3 helpless infants reduced him to panic. All right, he muttered, pacing between their bassinets. One at a time. God, how do I even? His hands shook as he reached for the boy, the largest of the 3. The baby's fists flailed until Adrian held him against his chest. And just like that, the crying eased. The warmth of the child's tiny body seeped into him, softening something long hardened. Adrian let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. You're just like her, aren't you? His voice broke, the weight of the truth pressing down. Always needing someone close. And I wasn't there when she needed me most. The baby whimpered softly, almost as if answering. By the time Margaret returned, she found Adrian sitting in the rocking chair with all 3 of them in his lap, awkward, uncomfortable, but unwilling to let go. Margaret lingered by the doorway, her arms folded. She watched him, her eyes narrowing with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. You look ridiculous, she said finally. Adrian glanced up, weary but defiant. Then laugh. I don't care. Instead of laughing, Margaret stepped closer. They're not just your redemption, Adrian. They're her lifeline. If she wakes, if she sees you like this. His grip on the babies tightened. If she wakes. Margaret didn't flinch. Don't cling to hope so tightly that you ignore reality. The doctors are cautious. You must be too. He stood, towering, though exhaustion dulled his edge. Cautious? I've lived my life cautious. And it cost me everything. Not this time. I'll stay, Margaret. No matter how long it takes. Her gaze softened, but her words cut still. Then don't fail her again. That night, sleep evaded him. Isabella's face haunted his thoughts. The way she had smiled when she first told him she was pregnant years ago, the light in her eyes, the way she had said, "You'll be a wonderful father, Adrian." But he hadn't been. He had chosen the company, the endless grind, the chase of power. And she had slipped away, her love eroded by neglect and absence. Now fate had thrown him back into her orbit, demanding he shoulder what he had once abandoned. Every gurgle from the bassinets, every sigh from Isabella's fragile chest, was a reminder. He was chained here by more than duty. He was chained by love, raw and unfinished. Over the following days, whispers began circulating among the staff. The nurses, once skeptical of the cold-eyed CEO, began softening. They saw him pacing with crying infants in his arms, saw him awkwardly learning how to mix formulas, saw him speaking in hushed tones to a woman who hadn't woken in weeks. "Do you see the way he looks at her?" one whispered to another as they passed by. "Like she's the only thing that matters." "And the babies," the other added. "He won't let them out of his sight. He's terrified of failing them." It was true. For all his power, Adrian was terrified. Every time he looked at Isabella, every time the monitor dipped, he feared the moment he might lose her forever. One evening, Margaret confronted him again. She found him by Isabella's side, his hand wrapped around hers, his thumb brushing absently over her wedding ring that still lingered on her finger. "Adrian," Margaret said softly, almost hesitant, "what if she never wakes?" The words stabbed deep. He looked at Isabella, pale but breathing, and for a moment he couldn't answer. Finally, he whispered, "Then I'll raise them with her memory in every corner of their lives. I'll make sure they know who their mother was, what she gave to bring them here, and they'll never doubt they were loved." Margaret exhaled sharply, as if holding back tears. Maybe you've changed more than I thought." But his gaze never left Isabella. "Not changed. Just remembering who I was meant to be." That night, as he sat again with one of the babies on his chest, Adrian whispered to the child, "Do you know what your mother once told me? She said love is not about choosing when it's easy, it's about staying when it's impossible. I didn't understand then, but I do now." He closed his eyes, breathing in the fragile warmth of new life, chained to the fragile thread of a woman's heartbeat. And in that fragile place, Adrian Blackwell, the man who had once chosen power over love, realized that this time he was being chosen. Not by fortune, not by success, but by destiny. The hospital became his prison and his penance. Adrian Blackwell, once hailed as a titan, now measured his hours not by closing deals but by the cries of 3 fragile voices. Each wail tore him from his thoughts, each tiny whimper pulling him back into a role he was unprepared for: father. It was near midnight when the nurse's shift ended and Margaret had stepped out to take a call. For the first time since their birth, Adrian was left alone with the 3 tiny lives. The room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of monitors, until the silence shattered. First one child cried, then another, then all 3. Their fragile voices pierced him like arrows. He froze. Boardrooms never rattled him. Billion-dollar negotiations never made him sweat. But 3 helpless infants reduced him to panic. "All right," he muttered, pacing between their bassinets. "One at a time. God, how do I even—" His hands shook as he reached for the boy, the largest of the 3. The baby's fists flailed until Adrian held him against his chest. And just like that, the crying eased. The warmth of the child's tiny body seeped into him, softening something long hardened. Adrian let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. You're just like her, aren't you?" His voice broke, the weight of the truth pressing down. "Always needing someone close. And I wasn't there when she needed me most." The baby whimpered softly, almost as if answering. By the time Margaret returned, she found Adrian sitting in the rocking chair with all 3 of them in his lap, awkward, uncomfortable, but unwilling to let go. Margaret lingered by the doorway, her arms folded. She watched him, her eyes narrowing with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. "You look ridiculous," she said finally. Adrian glanced up, weary but defiant. "Then laugh. I don't care." Instead of laughing, Margaret stepped closer. "They're not just your redemption, Adrian. They're her lifeline. If she wakes, if she sees you like this." His grip on the babies tightened. "If she wakes." Margaret didn't flinch. "Don't cling to hope so tightly that you ignore reality. The doctors are cautious. You must be too. He stood, towering, though exhaustion dulled his edge. Cautious? I've lived my life cautious. And it cost me everything. Not this time. I'll stay, Margaret. No matter how long it takes. Her gaze softened, but her words cut still. Then don't fail her again. That night, sleep evaded him. Isabella's face haunted his thoughts. The way she had smiled when she first told him she was pregnant years ago, the light in her eyes, the way she had said, "You'll be a wonderful father, Adrian." But he hadn't been. He had chosen the company, the endless grind, the chase of power. And she had slipped away, her love eroded by neglect and absence. Now fate had thrown him back into her orbit, demanding he shoulder what he had once abandoned. Every gurgle from the bassinets, every sigh from Isabella's fragile chest, was a reminder. He was chained here by more than duty. He was chained by love, raw and unfinished. Over the following days, whispers began circulating among the staff. The nurses, once skeptical of the cold-eyed CEO, began softening. They saw him pacing with crying infants in his arms, saw him awkwardly learning how to mix formula, saw him speaking in hushed tones to a woman who hadn't woken in weeks. "Do you see the way he looks at her?" one whispered to another as they passed by. "Like she's the only thing that matters." "And the babies," the other added. "He won't let them out of his sight. He's terrified of failing them." It was true. For all his power, Adrian was terrified. Every time he looked at Isabella, every time the monitor dipped, he feared the moment he might lose her forever. One evening, Margaret confronted him again. She found him by Isabella's side, his hand wrapped around hers, his thumb brushing absently over her wedding ring that still lingered on her finger. "Adrian," Margaret said softly, almost hesitant, "what if she never wakes?" The words stabbed deep. He looked at Isabella, pale but breathing, and for a moment he couldn't answer. Finally, he whispered, "Then I'll raise them with her memory in every corner of their lives. I'll make sure they know who their mother was, what she gave to bring them here. And they'll never doubt they were loved." Margaret exhaled sharply, as if holding back tears. Maybe you've changed more than I thought." But his gaze never left Isabella. Not changed. Just remembering who I was meant to be. That night, as he sat again with one of the babies on his chest, Adrian whispered to the child, "Do you know what your mother once told me? She said love is not about choosing when it's easy, it's about staying when it's impossible." I didn't understand then. But I do now. He closed his eyes, breathing in the fragile warmth of new life, chained to the fragile thread of a woman's heartbeat. And in that fragile place, Adrian Blackwell, the man who had once chosen power over love, realized that this time he was being chosen. Not by fortune, not by success, but by destiny. The soft glow of the nursery lights gave the illusion of peace, but the stillness was deceiving. For days, Adrian had fought exhaustion with sheer willpower, living in the rhythm of cries and monitors. He told himself he was strong enough, unbreakable. But destiny was about to test him harder than any boardroom war. It started with a sound too sharp to ignore, the piercing alarm of one of the monitors beside the bassinets. Adrian leapt from his chair, heart slamming into his throat. The smallest of the three, the girl with the delicate features, had stopped breathing evenly. Her chest rose shallowly, then paused, her lips tinged blue. "No, no, no, no," Adrian gasped, scooping her up with trembling hands. "Stay with me, please." The alarms drew nurses in immediately, their practiced urgency flooding the room. One moved him aside, taking the infant with gentle firmness while another prepared oxygen. Adrian staggered back, his knees threatening to buckle as he watched them fight for her breath. His mind screamed, "Not her. Not again. Not after everything." The seconds stretched into eternity until at last, a tiny cry split the air. Adrian's head dropped into his hands, tears burning his eyes as the sound cut through the fear. "She's stable," a nurse reassured softly. "Premature lungs are delicate, but she's strong. You were right to react quickly." But Adrian barely heard her. He was already kneeling beside Isabella's bed, clutching her hand, whispering through clenched teeth. You see, they need you. I can't do this alone. I don't care what it takes. Wake up, Isabella. Please, wake up. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but as he pressed her hand to his forehead, he felt it, the twitch of her fingers. His head snapped up. Isabella. Her eyelids fluttered, lips parting as if to form words, but no sound emerged. Still, the faint squeeze of her hand was undeniable. Doctor! Adrian's voice cracked, raw with hope and terror. She moved. Within moments, staff swarmed the room, checking her vitals, whispering updates. Adrian was pushed back, but his eyes never left her face. One doctor turned to him, measured but cautious. It's a positive sign, Mr. Blackwell. She's not out of danger, but she's fighting. She's fighting. The words became a drumbeat in his chest, fueling both hope and dread. Later that night, after the storm had settled, Adrian found Margaret in the corridor. She leaned against the wall, her face pale, her hands gripping her rosary tight. You knew, Adrian accused, his voice low but shaking. You knew she wasn't safe, didn't you? You tried to keep me away from this. Margaret's eyes flashed, but they softened quickly, weighed down by something heavier than anger. I wanted to protect her. From you. His jaw clenched. From me. You broke her, Adrian, Margaret hissed, her voice trembling with grief. When she left you, she was already carrying scars no one could see. She cried herself to sleep, night after night, praying you would choose her over your empire. You never did. And when she found out she was pregnant again. Her words faltered, but the truth bled through. She told me she wouldn't tell you. Not until she was sure you'd changed. Because she couldn't bear the thought of raising 3 children in the shadow of your indifference. Adrian staggered back, as though her words were physical blows. His throat tightened, his chest hollow. She kept it from me, he whispered, broken. Margaret's eyes brimmed with tears. She loved you, even when she shouldn't have. But love wasn't enough to protect her from you. The corridor spun around him. He braced against the wall, gasping for breath as Margaret's confession echoed in his skull. He thought of Isabella's smile, the faith in her eyes when she once told him, "You'll be a wonderful father." And how he had betrayed that faith. His fists clenched until his knuckles ached. Rage and grief warred inside him, not at Margaret, not even at Isabella, but at himself. He whispered hoarsely, "Then I'll make it enough now. I don't care what I have to destroy inside me, I'll make it enough." Back in the room, Adrian sat by Isabella's side again. The babies slept peacefully nearby, unaware of the storm swirling in their father's heart. He leaned close, his forehead touching hers. His voice cracked in the darkness. "I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I failed you when it mattered most. But if you give me this one chance, if you open your eyes, I'll spend the rest of my life proving you were right to love me." The monitors beeped steadily, her breathing even but fragile. No reply came. And yet, Adrian stayed. Hour after hour, a prisoner of love, chained by guilt, bound by the flicker of hope. If you were in Isabella's place, waking to a man who once broke you but now begs for redemption, would you give him a second chance, or turn away forever? Share your thoughts below. The night stretched endlessly, broken only by the rhythmic beep of monitors and the soft sighs of 3 fragile lives in their bassinets. Adrian hadn't moved in hours. He sat hunched forward, his hand wrapped tightly around Isabella's, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. Then it happened. A sound so faint it almost didn't register, a soft groan, the scrape of air passing through dry lips. Adrian's head snapped up. Isabella! Her eyelids fluttered, the muscles in her face twitching like a dreamer caught between worlds. His heart raced. For a moment he thought it was another illusion, another cruel trick of hope. But then her lashes parted, revealing unfocused, hazy eyes. The breath left his lungs in a rush. "Bella!" His voice cracked, a man unmade. Her gaze drifted weakly across the room, blinking against the sterile light. The incubators. The machines. And finally, him. Her lips parted, a whisper escaping like the faintest ghost of a word. Adrian. It was barely audible, but it shattered him. He pressed her hand against his lips, trembling. I'm here. I never left. I'm right here. Her eyes closed again, exhaustion pulling her under, but not before a flicker of confusion and recognition crossed her features. It was enough to awaken more than her body. It stirred the past. Inside Isabella's drifting consciousness, memories stirred. A younger Adrian, sharp suit, sharper eyes, standing in a penthouse kitchen, his phone glued to his ear while she set down plates of pasta that had grown cold waiting for him. Adrian, she'd said softly. It's our anniversary. He had silenced her with a single raised finger, his focus entirely on the voice at the other end of the line. Deals. Clients. Money. She had sat alone at the table that night, the candles burning low, her hands folded in her lap as she listened to his laughter with someone else. The ache in her chest back then felt like a dull knife. It returned now, sharper, alive. By her bedside, Adrian saw the twitch of her brow, the faint lines of pain crossing her forehead as though she were dreaming. He could guess what memories haunted her. He didn't need to see them to know. He remembered them himself. The anniversaries forgotten. The arguments that ended not with reconciliation but with slammed doors. The way her voice had cracked the night she said, I don't recognize you anymore. He clenched her hand tighter, as if willing his present self to protect her from the wounds he had inflicted in the past. I know what you're remembering, he whispered, his voice hoarse. And I hate myself for it. But please, don't stop fighting because of me. Let me make it right. Margaret entered quietly, carrying a fresh blanket for Isabella. She paused when she saw Adrian's posture, the mighty CEO hunched like a penitent before a shrine. She stirred, Adrian said without lifting his gaze. Margaret's eyes softened with relief, but she only nodded. Good. She's stronger than anyone gives her credit for. Adrian glanced up, searching her face. Tell me the truth. Does she even want to see me awake beside her? Or am I just the last mistake she'd rather forget? Margaret hesitated. Her protective instincts warred with the sight of his brokenness. Finally, she sighed. That's for her to decide, Adrian. Not me. And not you. Her words cut him with their simplicity. He bowed his head again, returning to silence. Hours later, Isabella's eyes fluttered open once more. This time, they stayed open longer. The world around her was blurred, but she recognized the steady grip on her hand, the warmth that hadn't left her side. Her throat was raw, but she forced out the words. The babies! Adrian leaned close, his eyes soft with a vulnerability he had never shown in boardrooms or headlines. They're here. Safe. Strong. Just like you. She blinked, moisture gathering in her eyes. Relief. Love. And then, hesitation. Her gaze searched his face, lingering on the deep lines carved by sleepless nights. Her lips trembled as a memory bled through, the same face once turned cold, dismissive, unreadable. Why was he here now? Why, after everything? Adrian seemed to hear the unspoken question. His thumb brushed gently across her hand. I know you have every reason not to trust me. Every reason to turn away. But I'm not leaving again. Not now. Not ever. Her lips parted, but no words came. The weight of history pressed down too heavily. Instead, she closed her eyes, letting a single tear slip free. Later, as the machines beeped steadily and Isabella drifted in and out, one of the nurses quietly approached Adrian. She's been waiting for you, you know, the nurse said gently. Even when she pretended she wasn't. I've seen it before, women holding on, hoping the person they love most will show up. Adrian's chest tightened. I don't deserve that kind of grace. The nurse smiled softly. No one ever does. That's what makes it grace. Though her eyes had opened, though she had spoken his name, Adrian felt the distance between them as vast as ever. She was alive, but not yet his. And as he sat watching her breathe, he wondered, would she let him cross the gulf of years and failures, or would she keep him forever on the other side of the divide he created? The hospital room was quiet, save for the faint hum of machines. Isabella's breathing had steadied over the last day. She could now open her eyes for longer stretches, though fatigue still claimed her quickly. Her voice was little more than a whisper, yet every word she managed to form carried a weight Adrian could not ignore. He had been there for every moment, hand at her side, eyes fixed on her face like a man afraid she would disappear if he looked away. But when her voice came that evening, it wasn't the softness of a fragile woman. It was sharp, deliberate. "Why are you here, Adrian?" The question pierced him deeper than any accusation. He leaned closer, searching her eyes. "Because I should have never left." Her lips quivered, not with weakness, but with the old fire he used to know so well. "You didn't just leave. You abandoned me. Do you even remember the night it ended?" The walls of the hospital faded in her mind, replaced with the cold steel and glass of their penthouse apartment. It was raining that night. Heavy sheets of water blurred the city lights, drumming against the tall windows like angry fists. Isabella stood in the living room, a small suitcase at her side. Her hands trembled, but not from the storm outside, from the storm within her chest. Adrian was late. Again. When the door finally swung open, he entered without apology, his tie loosened, phone still glued to his ear. He barely noticed her at first, his mind consumed by deals and deadlines. "Adrian," she had said firmly, her voice shaking but determined. He looked up, irritation flashing across his face at being interrupted. Then he noticed the suitcase. "What is this?" His tone was clipped, as though she were an employee failing expectations. Her throat tightened, but she held her ground. "I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" "Live like I don't exist. Pretend I'm not drowning while you're building your empire. You come home, but you're never here. I'm invisible to you." He had scoffed, setting down his briefcase with a thud. "Invisible? You live in a penthouse. You drive whatever car you want. You have—" "I don't want things, Adrian." Her voice cracked. "I want you." For a moment, silence stretched between them, thunder rolling in the distance. His jaw clenched, his expression hardening. "You knew who I was when you married me," he said coldly. "This is who I am. This is what I do." Her eyes were filled with tears. "And what about who I am? What about what we were?" He didn't answer. He turned away, loosening his cufflinks, his silence louder than any shout. That silence had broken something inside her. She lifted the suitcase and walked toward the door, her heart shattering with every step. She had paused at the threshold, waiting, begging, for him to stop her, to say anything, to show her she mattered more than his empire. But he said nothing. The door clicked shut behind her, and with it, the life they had built crumbled. Isabella's eyes glistened with tears as the memory bled into the hospital room. "That's the night I stopped being your wife, Adrian. Not because the papers said so, but because you let me walk away." Adrian's grip tightened on her hand, his chest constricting. "I remember," he whispered hoarsely. "God, Bella, I remember every detail. And I hate myself for it." Her gaze hardened, even as her body trembled with weakness. "Then why now? Why show up when I'm too broken to push you away again?" His eyes burned, the dam of pride finally breaking. "Because I was a coward. Because I thought I had time to fix it, to find the right moment to chase you. But time ran out, and I almost lost you forever. I can't," his voice cracked. "I can't lose you now. Not when I've already lost so much of us." Isabella turned her face away, blinking back tears. She wanted to believe him. Her heart screamed for it. But her memories whispered warnings, cold silences, broken promises, the hollow echo of a man too consumed by ambition to love her fully. The door creaked open, Margaret stepping in with a tray of tea. She froze at the tension in the room, sensing the storm that hung between them. Isabella quickly swiped at her tears, but Margaret noticed. She set the tray down gently, her voice calm. "Memories have sharp edges, child. They cut deep when you least expect it." Adrian bowed his head, ashamed. Isabella stayed silent. Margaret's gaze lingered on Adrian. But wounds can scar over if they're tended. If the hands that caused them learn to heal. Neither spoke, but her words settled into the silence, heavy and undeniable. When Margaret left, Isabella's voice broke the stillness. "Do you even know what it cost me to leave that night? Do you know how many times I wanted to turn back, praying you would come after me?" Adrian's voice cracked with truth. "I know. Because I wanted to. Every single day. I'd sit in that empty penthouse and curse myself for letting you go. But I thought you deserved better than the man I was." Her eyes searched his, trembling. "And what about now? Are you still that man?" Adrian swallowed hard, his thumb brushing the fragile bones of her hand. "No. Because losing you showed me what success really costs. And if I have to burn down every boardroom, every deal, every empire I built, I will. Just to have another chance." Her breath caught, a war waging inside her. Hope flickered, but fear still loomed larger. She turned away again, closing her eyes, but silent tears slipped down her cheeks. Adrian pressed his forehead to her hand, holding on as though it tethered him to redemption. For the first time in years, both of them wept, not as CEO and ex-wife, not as strangers bound by tragedy, but as two souls remembering the love that had nearly destroyed them. The night deepened around the hospital, the corridors bathed in muted light. Adrian sat in the chair beside Isabella's bed, her hand still nestled in his. She was asleep now, her breathing shallow but steady, the lines of pain easing from her face. For the first time in days, Adrian allowed his body to relax into the chair, exhaustion weighing on him. His eyes traced her face, the softness of her lashes, the faint frown that lingered even in dreams. She had always carried storms within her, and he had been the fool who added to them. He reached for his jacket draped across the nightstand, searching for his phone. As he lifted it, an envelope slipped from the pocket of Isabella's bag, falling to the floor with a soft rustle. At first, he hesitated. It was sealed, her name written on it in bold strokes, his name. To Adrian. His heart clenched. With shaking fingers, he slid the envelope open. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, slightly crumpled from being carried for too long. He unfolded it slowly, his breath catching as her handwriting stared back at him. "Adrian, if you are reading this, it means I was too weak to say it myself. There were so many words I never got to speak, so many truths I buried under silence because I didn't know if you would care. But the truth is, I never stopped loving you. Even when I left, even when my heart turned cold, I loved you. That love became a wound I carried every single day." His throat tightened, his vision blurring. "I thought leaving would free me from the emptiness of being unseen. But it only created another emptiness. I longed for you to come after me, to fight for me, to prove that I was worth more than glass towers and business meetings. But you never came. And so I told myself I had to move on. That you were better without me." The words struck like knives, each one cutting into his soul. "And now, carrying these children, I see pieces of you in every heartbeat, every flutter. I wanted them to know their father, even if you never knew me again. If I don't make it, Adrian, promise me one thing. Don't let them feel invisible. Don't let them grow up thinking love is silence. Be the father they need, even if you could never be the husband I wanted." At the bottom, her handwriting trembled into fading ink. "I still love you. Always." The letter slipped from his fingers, landing on his lap. He pressed both hands to his face, choking on a sob that refused to stay buried. For the first time in years, the man who commanded boardrooms and broke competitors down to dust broke himself. He fell to his knees beside her bed, clutching her hand to his lips. "I'm sorry," he whispered over and over, his tears dampening her skin. "I should have fought for you. I should have torn the world apart to bring you back. God, Bella, I failed you." Isabella stirred faintly, her eyes fluttering open. Her weak voice brushed against his grief. "Adrian." He quickly wiped his face, but his brokenness lingered in every line. His voice cracked. "I found the letter." Her expression shifted, panic flickering in her tired eyes. You weren't supposed to. Why didn't you tell me? His voice rose with anguish. Why did you carry this alone? You loved me all this time, and God, Bella, I wasted it. She closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. Because I didn't think you wanted to hear it. Adrian leaned closer, gripping her fragile shoulders with desperate tenderness. I wanted nothing else. I just didn't know how to stop being the man the world demanded me to be. But I swear to you, Bella, I'm done. No more empty penthouse. No more boardrooms. No more pretending success means anything without you. I don't care about the empire. I just want you. Her lips trembled. For a moment, she looked at him as though she didn't recognize the man before her. Then her voice cracked with fragile truth. You always said that empire was your life. It was, he admitted, his voice breaking. Until I realized I was building a palace for a king who had no queen. And without you, Bella, I was nothing but a hollow man. Her tears spilled freely now, mixing grief with the faintest glimmer of hope. And if I don't make it? If these babies live but I don't, what then? Adrian pressed her hand to his heart. Then I'll spend every day showing them the love I should have shown you. And they'll know their mother was everything. But Bella, his voice deepened into a vow, I am not letting you go again. Not to death, not to anything. The door creaked again, and Margaret stood in the shadows of the doorway. She had heard enough. Her eyes glistened as she whispered, Sometimes love waits until the breaking to be born again. Adrian glanced at her, his tears still fresh, and for once he did not argue, did not hide. He simply nodded, holding Isabella's hand like it was the lifeline to his soul. As night stretched toward dawn, Isabella drifted back into sleep, her breathing fragile but steady. Adrian sat by her side, the letter clutched tightly in his hand. He no longer saw himself as the untouchable CEO, nor as the broken man who let her walk away. For the first time, he saw himself as what he always should have been, her husband, her partner, her home. And as the machines hummed, as life continued to fight inside her fragile body, Adrian made a silent vow to God, to fate, to the universe itself. I will not fail her again. If you discovered a hidden letter from someone you thought was gone from your life, confessing they always loved you, would it heal you or haunt you? Share your answer below. The dawn broke softly through the hospital blinds, painting Isabella's room with muted gold. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open, and the first thing she saw was Adrian, still in the chair, still holding her hand, his head bowed in exhausted sleep. For a moment, she simply watched him. There was no CEO mask here, no sharp jaw set in pride or arrogance. His face in sleep looked almost boyish, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen since their early years of marriage. She felt a pang in her chest, not of pain, but of longing. Her fingers brushed against his, the smallest touch. His eyes snapped open immediately, as though her heartbeat had called him. You're awake, he whispered, his voice thick from sleep but layered with relief. I am, she murmured, smiling faintly. And you stayed. His hand tightened around hers. I'll always stay now, Bella. You couldn't push me away if you tried. A nurse arrived shortly after with a small tray of food, plain oatmeal, a slice of toast, and weak tea. Isabella wrinkled her nose. You're joking. Adrian chuckled, the sound warm, almost disarming. Doctor's orders. Don't look at me like I had a hand in this menu. She shot him a playful glare. You probably eat like a king in your glass tower. Steak dinners and fine wine while I get... She poked at the oatmeal with her spoon. This. His lips quirked. For what it's worth, I would trade every steak dinner to sit here with you eating hospital oatmeal. She raised an eyebrow, skepticism in her eyes. That sounds suspiciously like charm. Not charm, he said softly, leaning closer. Truth. And for the first time in what felt like years, Isabella laughed. A small, breathy laugh that carried light into the dim corners of the room. Adrian's chest tightened at the sound. He hadn't realized how much he missed her laughter until it returned. Later, when the hospital quieted, they talked. It started with simple things, the the weather, the ridiculous noises from the machines, but soon slipped into old memories. "Do you remember that night we got caught in the rain?" Isabella asked, her eyes distant with fondness. Adrian smiled. "We ducked into that bookstore to dry off. You picked up every single book in the romance section, judging all the covers. And you pretended not to care," she teased. He chuckled. "I cared. I just wanted an excuse to stand close to you without making a fool of myself." She tilted her head, studying him. "You've always been better at hiding your feelings than showing them." His smile faded into something raw. "And it cost me you." Silence lingered, but it was not heavy. Instead, it was thoughtful, like a wound beginning to close. Isabella shifted uncomfortably, wincing from the pressure in her belly. Adrian immediately moved to adjust her pillows, his hands surprisingly gentle. "You don't have to fuss," she whispered. "Yes, I do." His voice was low but steady. "I lost the right to care for you once. I'm not losing it again." Her eyes glistened, and she reached out, letting her fingertips trace the back of his hand. "Adrian, if I don't—" He pressed his lips to her fingers before she could finish. Don't even speak it. You're not leaving me, Bella. Not now, not ever." Her voice cracked, but she didn't argue. Instead, she let her hand rest in his, her defenses slipping away piece by fragile piece. Later that afternoon, Margaret entered with fresh linens. She paused at the sight of the two of them, Adrian adjusting Isabella's blanket, Isabella watching him with softened eyes. "You're both starting to look less like ghosts," Margaret said gently. Adrian smiled faintly. "She's stubborn, but she's healing." Isabella rolled her eyes. "I've always been stubborn. You just noticed." Margaret gave them both a knowing look. Stubborn or not, love doesn't heal in a straight line. Don't take these moments for granted. Her words settled in the air, a reminder that their peace was temporary, fragile. As evening fell, Adrian pulled out his phone. "I want to show you something." He opened his gallery and handed it to Isabella. She scrolled through photos of buildings, award ceremonies, corporate dinners, until she found one picture buried between them all. It was of her. Not a recent one, but years ago, when they were still married. She was laughing, sitting on the hood of their old car with a milkshake in her hand. "You kept this?" she whispered. "I couldn't delete it," he admitted. "On nights when the silence was too much, I looked at it. At you. And for a moment, I remembered what it felt like to be alive." Tears welled in her eyes. "Adrian." He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers. "I don't want memories anymore, Bella. I want now. I want us." For the first time, she didn't pull away. Instead, she whispered back, "Then don't let go this time." The evening shadows stretched long across Isabella's room, the monitors humming their steady rhythm. Adrian had ordered dinner for himself but barely touched it. His real attention remained fixed on her. She noticed, of course. She always had. "Eat, Adrian," she murmured, her voice soft but teasing. "You look like you're about to interrogate that sandwich." He smirked faintly. "It tastes like cardboard. Hospital food is a crime." Her lips curved. "And yet, you're still here instead of in some five-star restaurant. Because no steak, no wine, no luxury is worth more than being here with you." His voice trembled on the last word, betraying the emotion he usually locked away. For a moment, Isabella's gaze softened, the ice around her heart cracking further. "You always did know how to say the right thing, when it was almost too late." Adrian swallowed hard, his throat tight. "I'm trying not to be too late this time." The quiet of the room wrapped around them, heavy but intimate. Isabella shifted slightly, wincing but determined. "Adrian, do you know why I never remarried?" His head snapped up, eyes searching hers. "Why?" "Because I couldn't. Every man who tried, every smile, every word, it wasn't you. Even after everything, even after the betrayal, I couldn't force myself to belong to anyone else." The weight of her words nearly crushed him. His breath caught, and for the first time in years, his carefully maintained armor cracked completely. "Bella!" His voice broke, tears glistening in his eyes. "Do you know what it's like to come home to a penthouse that feels like a tomb? To lie awake night after night hearing your voice in the silence? I lost myself when I lost you. Money, power, empire. It was all ash without you." Her own tears slid down her cheeks. She reached for his hand, squeezing. "Then why didn't you come back?" His face twisted with guilt. "Because I thought I didn't deserve to. I thought I'd destroyed us beyond repair. And I was afraid you'd already found happiness without me." Silence fell between them again, but it wasn't the silence of anger. It was the silence of two people bearing the rawest parts of themselves, finally seeing each other fully. The nurse dimmed the lights before leaving them alone. The room glowed softly, a sanctuary from the world. Adrian moved closer, sitting on the edge of her bed. His hand brushed her hair back, tucking a stray strand behind her ear. "I forgot how soft your hair is," he murmured. Her breath hitched. "And I forgot how much I missed you fussing over me." Their eyes locked. For a long moment, nothing else existed. No pain, no machines, no looming danger. Just them, suspended in a fragile peace. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what if I don't make it?" He shook his head fiercely, cupping her cheek. "No. Don't you dare talk like that. You will make it. I'll fight for you with everything I have." Her lips quivered into a faint smile. "Promise me, if something happens, you'll love them enough for both of us. Promise me you'll tell them about me, not as the woman who died bringing them into the world, but as the woman who loved them before they even existed." Adrian's throat tightened. He pressed his forehead to hers, his tears finally spilling freely. "No, Bella. I won't promise that because I refuse to let you go. You're going to be here to tell them yourself." Her eyes closed, and for the first time, she let herself rest against him. Hours later, with the room hushed and dim, Adrian whispered, "Do you remember the silly nicknames we used to give each other?" She chuckled softly, surprising herself. "You mean when you called me your chaos hurricane? And you called me Mr. Stoneface?" He teased back. Her laughter filled the room, weak but real. Adrian closed his eyes, drinking in the sound like oxygen. "Do you think we can ever go back to that?" she asked, her tone suddenly serious. "No," he said honestly. She blinked, startled, until he added, "I don't want to go back. I want to move forward, stronger, wiser, with all the scars we've earned. I want a future that isn't built on running from the past." Her hand slipped into his. "That actually sounds like something I could want too." Just as the fragile peace settled, the monitor beeped irregularly. Isabella gasped, her hand flying to her belly. "Bella!" Adrian panicked, standing instantly. The nurse rushed in, checking vitals. Her blood pressure's dropping slightly. "We need to keep monitoring. Mr. Blackwood, stay calm. It's not critical yet." Adrian's heart thundered as he sat back down, clutching Isabella's hand. Her breathing slowed, but the tension remained etched across his face. "See?" she whispered faintly, trying to soothe him. "Still here." But Adrian's grip only tightened, his jaw set. "I'm not losing you, Bella. I don't care what it takes." The night deepened, wrapping the hospital in a cocoon of silence. The city outside buzzed faintly, muffled by walls and glass, but in Isabella's room, time slowed. Adrian sat at her bedside, refusing to sleep, his fingers laced with hers. "Adrian," Isabella whispered, eyes heavy but still alert, "you should rest." He shook his head firmly. "I've rested for years without you, Bella. Sleep feels useless now. If I blink too long, I might miss something. Miss you." Her lips curved faintly, though her voice cracked with weariness. "You've always had a dramatic streak. Even when we were young." "Not dramatic," he corrected softly. "Desperate. Desperate to make sure you know I'm here this time. Desperate to prove I won't run when it gets hard." Her eyes shimmered, and she squeezed his hand. Then prove it by telling me the truth. All of it. No more shadows, no more walls. Why did you really let us fall apart? Adrian's throat tightened. His instinct was to deflect, to bury the truth beneath controlled tones and businesslike precision. But the way she looked at him, half broken, half unyielding, left him no escape. I thought, he exhaled shakily, running a hand through his hair. I thought love was weakness. I built myself into someone untouchable, someone who could never be left bleeding by loss. When I started losing myself in you, I panicked. I thought if I let myself need you, I'd destroy the empire I'd worked for. Her eyes widened, hurt but understanding flickering there. So I pulled back, he continued, voice raw. I worked longer hours. I said things I didn't mean. I convinced myself you deserved someone stronger, when the truth was, I was the one who was too weak to admit I needed you more than oxygen. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. Isabella's breathing was shallow, her expression unreadable. Then softly she whispered, "You coward." Adrian flinched, but then her lips curved faintly. "You thought needing me was weakness? Adrian, it was the strongest thing you ever did. Because love, the messy, terrifying, relentless kind, it's the only thing that makes us human." Her words hit him harder than any boardroom battle ever had. Her voice trembled now, turning inward. "Do you want to know the truth I carried after you left?" "Always," he whispered. "I was afraid that maybe I wasn't enough. That the woman you married wasn't the woman you really wanted. That when the fights came, when I cried at night alone, you saw weakness where you should have seen your home." Tears streaked down her cheeks, and Adrian reached to brush them away. "No," he said fiercely. "You were my home, Bella. You were the only thing I ever wanted. I was the fool who couldn't live inside the gift I already had." Her hand trembled against his cheek. "Then don't be that fool again." The heaviness eased, replaced by a fragile, trembling hope. Adrian shifted closer, careful not to disturb the wires and monitors. "Close your eyes," he whispered. "Humor me." "Why?" "Because I want you to see it." She sighed but obeyed, her lashes brushing her pale skin. "See what?" "Our future," he said quietly. "Imagine it." The triplets, 2 boys and a girl, maybe, all running down the hall of a house that's filled with laughter instead of silence. You in the kitchen, yelling at me for burning toast again. Me, sneaking behind you to kiss your neck while you pretend to be annoyed. Her lips quivered into a smile as tears leaked from her closed eyes. "Go on." "Evenings on the porch, watching the sun set while you lean against me. Our kids fighting over who gets the last cookie, and you pretending to scold them while hiding your own peace." A small laugh escaped her. "You always did know how to paint a picture." Adrian leaned in, voice lower, rougher. "It's not just a picture, Bella. It's a promise. If you fight for this life, I'll give it to you. I'll give you everything I was too blind to before." Her eyes opened, glistening with hope and fear entwined. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other, the air thick with unsaid prayers. Then, slowly, Isabella lifted her hand to his face, pulling him closer. Their lips met, not with the passion of their youth, but with the depth of 2 souls who had weathered storms and still found their way back. It was soft, trembling, and achingly real. When they broke apart, Isabella whispered, "If I survive this, Adrian—" "No, when I survive this, we start over. No half measures, no walls. Just us." His forehead pressed against hers. "Then hold me to it, Bella. Hold me accountable every single day." For a while, they just stayed like that, breathing together, finding comfort in fragile peace. But as dawn began to creep into the horizon, the monitors blipped again. Isabella winced, her hand instinctively going to her belly. Adrian's heart clenched. "Bella!" The nurse rushed in, eyes narrowing at the screen. "Her vitals are dipping again. We'll need to keep her under close observation." Adrian's jaw set, his grip on her hand unyielding. He kissed her knuckles softly. "Whatever comes next, we face it together. You're not alone anymore. Isabella's eyes locked on his, filled with both fear and fierce determination. Then let's face it. The weight of her words hung heavy, a vow and a foreshadowing of the storm yet to come. If you had one chance to rebuild love with someone you lost, would you risk your heart again, or protect it at all costs? Share your answer in the comments. The morning sun filtered weakly through the hospital blinds, casting pale stripes of light across Isabella's bed. For a brief moment, Adrian allowed himself to believe in the fragile dream they had woven together the night before. He sat in the chair beside her, his thumb tracing circles across her palm as she dozed. But peace is a delicate thing, and in their world, it never lasted long. A sharp knock at the door broke the quiet. Dr. Patel stepped in, her expression grim, clipboard clutched tightly. Behind her trailed two nurses, moving with the quick, efficient motions that only spelled one thing: trouble. Adrian rose instantly, his entire body on edge. What is it? Dr. Patel's gaze softened as it landed on Isabella, then hardened again when she looked at Adrian. We need to talk. Privately. Isabella stirred at the words, opening her eyes with a groggy frown. No, she whispered hoarsely. Whatever you have to say it here. I don't want secrets. The doctor hesitated, then sighed. Isabella's condition has worsened. The stress on her body is reaching critical levels. We may have to deliver the babies prematurely if her vitals continue to decline. Adrian's stomach dropped. But that's dangerous, Dr. Patel finished. For her, and for the triplets. We're looking at the very real possibility that we can only save one. Either the mother or the children. The room went silent, the words slicing through the fragile web of hope they had spun. Isabella's lips parted, trembling. All of them, or me? Dr. Patel's eyes softened. We will do everything in our power to save both. But if the situation deteriorates suddenly, we will need an immediate decision. There will be no time for debate. The air thickened with unspoken horror. Adrian stepped closer to Isabella, his voice sharp, commanding. Then the choice is clear. Save her. Isabella's head jerked toward him, shock flashing in her eyes. Adrian, no. But Adrian's grip only tightened, his jaw set. I'm not losing you, Bella. I don't care what it takes. The night deepened, wrapping the hospital in a cocoon of silence. The city outside buzzed faintly, muffled by walls and glass, but in Isabella's room, time slowed. Adrian sat at her bedside, refusing to sleep, his fingers laced with hers. Adrian, Isabella whispered, eyes heavy but still alert. You should rest. He shook his head firmly. I've rested for years without you, Bella. Sleep feels useless now. If I blink too long, I might miss something. Miss you. Her lips curved faintly, though her voice cracked with weariness. You've always had a dramatic streak. Even when we were young. Not dramatic, he corrected softly. Desperate. Desperate to make sure you know I'm here this time. Desperate to prove I won't run when it gets hard. Her eyes shimmered, and she squeezed his hand. Then prove it by telling me the truth. All of it. No more shadows, no more walls. Why did you really let us fall apart? Adrian's throat tightened. His instinct was to deflect, to bury the truth beneath controlled tones and businesslike precision. But the way she looked at him, half broken, half unyielding, left him no escape. I thought, he exhaled shakily, running a hand through his hair. I thought love was weakness. I built myself into someone untouchable, someone who could never be left bleeding by loss. When I started losing myself in you, I panicked. I thought if I let myself need you, I'd destroy the empire I'd worked for. Her eyes widened, hurt but understanding flickering there. So I pulled back, he continued, voice raw. I worked longer hours. I said things I didn't mean. I convinced myself you deserved someone stronger, when the truth was, I was the one who was too weak to admit I needed you more than oxygen. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. Isabella's breathing was shallow, her expression unreadable. Then softly she whispered, You coward. Adrian flinched, but then her lips curved faintly. You thought needing me was weakness? Adrian, it was the strongest thing you ever did. Because love, the messy, terrifying, relentless kind, it's the only thing that makes us human. Her words hit him harder than any boardroom battle ever had. Her voice trembled now, turning inward. Do you want to know the truth I carried after you left? Always, he whispered. I was afraid that maybe I wasn't enough. That the woman you married wasn't the woman you really wanted. That when the fights came, when I cried at night alone, you saw weakness where you should have seen your home. Tears streaked down her cheeks, and Adrian reached to brush them away. No, he said fiercely. You were my home, Bella. You were the only thing I ever wanted. I was the fool who couldn't live inside the gift I already had. Her hand trembled against his cheek. Then don't be that fool again. The heaviness eased, replaced by a fragile, trembling hope. Adrian shifted closer, careful not to disturb the wires and monitors. Close your eyes, he whispered. Humor me. Why? Because I want you to see it. She sighed but obeyed, her lashes brushing her pale skin. See what? Our future, he said quietly. Imagine it. The triplets, 2 boys and a girl, maybe, all running down the hall of a house that's filled with laughter instead of silence. You in the kitchen, yelling at me for burning toast again. Me, sneaking behind you to kiss your neck while you pretend to be annoyed. Her lips quivered into a smile as tears leaked from her closed eyes. Go on. Evenings on the porch, watching the sun set while you lean against me. Our kids fighting over who gets the last cookie, and you pretending to scold them while hiding your own peace. A small laugh escaped her. You always did know how to paint a picture. Adrian leaned in, voice lower, rougher. It's not just a picture, Bella. It's a promise. If you fight for this life, I'll give it to you. I'll give you everything I was too blind to before. Her eyes opened, glistening with hope and fear entwined. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other, the air thick with unsaid prayers. Then, slowly, Isabella lifted her hand to his face, pulling him closer. Their lips met, not with the passion of their youth, but with the depth of 2 souls who had weathered storms and still found their way back. It was soft, trembling, and achingly real. When they broke apart, Isabella whispered, If I survive this, Adrian. No, when I survive this, we start over. No half measures, no walls. Just us. His forehead pressed against hers. Then hold me to it, Bella. Hold me accountable every single day. For a while, they just stayed like that, breathing together, finding comfort in fragile peace. But as dawn began to creep into the horizon, the monitors blipped again. Isabella winced, her hand instinctively going to her belly. Adrian's heart clenched. Bella. The nurse rushed in, eyes narrowing at the screen. Her vitals are dipping again. We'll need to keep her under close observation. Adrian's jaw set, his grip on her hand unyielding. He kissed her knuckles softly. Whatever comes next, we face it together. You're not alone anymore. Isabella's eyes locked on his, filled with both fear and fierce determination. Then let's face it. The weight of her words hung heavy, a vow and a foreshadowing of the storm yet to come. If you had one chance to rebuild love with someone you lost, would you risk your heart again, or protect it at all costs? Share your answer in the comments. The morning sun filtered weakly through the hospital blinds, casting pale stripes of light across Isabella's bed. For a brief moment, Adrian allowed himself to believe in the fragile dream they had woven together the night before. He sat in the chair beside her, his thumb tracing circles across her palm as she dozed. But peace is a delicate thing, and in their world, it never lasted long. A sharp knock at the door broke the quiet. Dr. Patel stepped in, her expression grim, clipboard clutched tightly. Behind her trailed 2 nurses, moving with the quick, efficient motions that only spelled one thing: trouble. Adrian rose instantly, his entire body on edge. What is it? Dr. Patel's gaze softened as it landed on Isabella, then hardened again when she looked at Adrian. We need to talk. Privately. Isabella stirred at the words, opening her eyes with a groggy frown. "No," she whispered hoarsely. "Whatever you have to say it here. I don't want secrets." The doctor hesitated, then sighed. "Isabella's condition has worsened. The stress on her body is reaching critical levels. We may have to deliver the babies prematurely if her vitals continue to decline." Adrian's stomach dropped. "But that's dangerous," Dr. Patel finished. "For her, and for the triplets. We're looking at the very real possibility that we can only save one, either the mother or the children." The room went silent, the words slicing through the fragile web of hope they had spun. Isabella's lips parted, trembling. "All of them, or me?" Dr. Patel's eyes softened. "We will do everything in our power to save both. But if the situation deteriorates suddenly, we will need an immediate decision. There will be no time for debate." The air thickened with unspoken horror. Adrian stepped closer to Isabella, his voice sharp, commanding. "Then the choice is clear. Save her." Isabella's head jerked toward him, shock flashing in her eyes. "Adrian, no." "Yes," he said, steel in his tone. "Bella, I will not lose you. Not again. If it comes down to it, you survive." Her hand shook as she clutched his arm. "Those children are ours, Adrian. Our future. I won't let them die for me." "They're not even here yet," he snapped, the words harsher than intended. "But you are." "I can't," his voice broke, and he clenched his jaw, forcing it steady. "I can't bury you, Bella. I can raise them alone if I must, but I can't live in a world where you're gone." Her eyes blazed with fury and heartbreak. "You selfish man. You'd condemn our babies to death just to spare yourself grief." The doctor quietly excused herself, leaving the storm to rage. Adrian and Isabella stared at each other, every wound of their past rising to the surface. "This is exactly why we failed before," Isabella whispered, her voice sharp as glass. "You've always tried to control everything. Even love. Even life and death. You think your money, your power, your will can bend the world to you." Adrian's hands curled into fists. "And you think sacrificing yourself makes you noble? You think leaving me behind to drown in guilt and raise 3 children alone is the answer?" Her chest heaved, monitors beeping faster. "It's not about you, Adrian. It's about them. About the lives we created. They deserve to live, even if it costs me mine. And I deserve to keep the woman I love," he shot back, his voice breaking. "I can't. Don't you understand? Losing you would destroy me. I can't choose them over you." The words hung heavy, cruel in their honesty. Tears streamed down Isabella's cheeks as she turned her face away, her hand slipping from his grasp. "Then maybe you don't love them. Not really. Because a father puts his children first, even above himself." The accusation shattered him. His breath caught, chest tightening. "Don't say that." But her silence was louder than any scream. Adrian staggered back, pain etched into every line of his face. He had faced hostile takeovers, courtroom battles, and billion-dollar crises without flinching. But this was the one fight he didn't know how to win. The door creaked open, and a nurse peeked in, concern flickering across her face. "Is everything all right?" "No," Isabella whispered, tears soaking her pillow. "Nothing is all right." Adrian turned, storming out before his own tears betrayed him. His footsteps echoed down the sterile hallway, his chest burning as though every breath was a wound. In the waiting lounge, Adrian collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled his lungs, suffocating him. He thought of the promises they'd whispered last night, the fragile dream of laughter and children in a house of warmth. And now it was all ashes. Was Isabella right? Was he too selfish? Too weak to put anyone above his own pain? He pressed his palms harder into his eyes, as though pressure could erase the truth. His empire meant nothing. His power meant nothing. He was just a man, broken, terrified, and about to lose everything he loved. And for the first time in years, Adrian Holt wept. The hallway seemed endless, stretching in sterile white as Adrian walked with no destination. He needed air, space, anything to outrun the echo of Isabella's words. Then maybe you don't love them. He pressed his palm against the cool glass of the window at the far end, staring out over the city skyline. The streets bustled below, taxis honking, people hurrying, life moving on as though his world wasn't unraveling. For the first time in his life, Adrian Holt didn't feel powerful. He felt small, fragile. His mind conjured images unbidden, 3 tiny caskets lined in white, a future he couldn't bear to imagine. And worse, Isabella's face, pale and still, her voice forever silenced. "No," he whispered to the glass. "I can't let it happen. I won't." But his chest tightened with the unbearable truth. Either choice condemned him. Save Isabella, and he lived with the ghosts of his children. Save the triplets, and he lived with her absence, a void no empire could fill. His reflection glared back at him in the window, eyes red, jaw trembling. For once, he didn't see the cold, unshakable CEO the world revered. He saw a broken man who had built walls so high around his heart that when love finally forced its way in, he didn't know how to hold it without crushing it. Isabella lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her chest rising and falling unevenly. The steady beep of the monitors felt like a countdown clock. Each blip was a reminder. Her body was failing, time was running out. She touched her swollen stomach, tears slipping into her hair. "My loves," she whispered to the unborn triplets, her voice cracked. "You deserve a chance. Even if I'm not here to see you grow." The words tore through her throat. She remembered the way Adrian's hand had rested on her belly the night before, the hope in his eyes. For one fleeting night, she had believed again, that maybe, just maybe, the man she loved had returned. But today, he had chosen her. Not them. She should have been grateful. She should have felt cherished. Instead, she felt abandoned all over again. Not because he didn't love her, but because his love came at the cost of theirs. Her hand tightened over her stomach. A mother protects her children. Always. The door creaked open, and to Isabella's surprise, it wasn't Adrian who stepped in, it was Evelyn, Adrian's sister. Her sharp heels clicked against the floor as she approached, her usual poise shadowed with worry. "Bella," Evelyn said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I just heard. The doctors are preparing for the worst." Isabella's eyes filled again. "Evelyn, if it comes down to it, promise me you'll tell Adrian to save them. Please." "He won't listen to me." Evelyn's eyes widened, glistening with unshed tears. "You're asking me to betray my brother?" "I'm asking you to protect his children," Isabella whispered. "If I die, he'll survive. He'll hurt, but he'll live. But if they die because of me, he'll never forgive himself. He'll drown in it." Evelyn froze, the weight of the words sinking deep. She had always admired Isabella's strength, her selflessness, even when she and Adrian had clashed. And now, facing death, Isabella wasn't asking for herself. She was asking for the ones who had no voice. Evelyn took Isabella's trembling hand and kissed it. "I'll make sure your babies are safe. I swear it." Isabella closed her eyes, relief washing over her even as fresh waves of fear crashed beneath it. Back in the corridor, Adrian finally sank into a bench, elbows braced on his knees. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a board member demanding updates on a deal, an investor pressing for answers. He turned it off, tossing it aside with shaking hands. What was the point of empires and power when the one thing he truly wanted was slipping away? He buried his face in his palms. What if Isabella was right? What if he wasn't capable of being the father they needed? He remembered the first time he saw her laugh, really laugh, years ago in Paris, a carefree moment before ambition poisoned everything. He had vowed then that he would protect that joy, that light. And yet all he had done was bring her sorrow. "God, what do I do?" he whispered hoarsely, the question raw, desperate. "Tell me how to choose when both choices are death." The silence answered back. Evelyn found him minutes later, her face pale but resolute. "Adrian, we need to talk." He looked up, red-eyed and unsteady. "What now?" She sat beside him, lowering her voice. Bella wants the babies saved. She begged me. And I think... Evelyn hesitated, her heart breaking for him. I think she's right. Adrian's chest constricted. No. Don't you dare say that. She loves you, Adrian. But she's their mother. If she goes and they live, her love carries on. If she lives but they don't, it will destroy her. And you. Her words slammed into him like knives. His throat closed, rage and grief battling inside him. You don't understand, he choked out. I can't lose her. I'd rather burn the world down than bury her. Evelyn touched his arm gently. Then maybe the bravest love you can give her is letting her go. Adrian stared at his sister, his body trembling. He wanted to scream, to deny it, to run back into that room and wrap Isabella in his arms until the world bent to his will. But for the first time, he couldn't. He was losing the one thing he had always clung to, control. And in its place was only love, raw and terrifying, demanding the sacrifice of everything he thought he was. And in that moment, Adrian Holt began to unravel. The sharp buzz of the intercom shattered the fragile quiet of the waiting corridor. Mr. Holt, a nurse's voice crackled urgently, we need you in the OR. It's time. Adrian shot to his feet, his heart pounding so hard he felt it in his throat. The words, cold, clinical, still landed like death tolls. It's time. Time to choose. Time to break. Time to lose everything. Evelyn's hand clutched his arm as he turned toward the double doors. Adrian, remember what she asked. Please. He shook his head violently. No. Don't say it again. Don't you dare. His voice broke, the steel of his usual tone cracked wide open. The operating room was blindingly white, humming with machines and urgency. Doctors moved with precision, nurses whispered codes he didn't understand, but all Adrian saw was Isabella. She lay on the table, pale as porcelain, hair plastered with sweat against her forehead. Tubes and monitors surrounded her like shackles. Her lips trembled, her eyes finding his the moment he stepped in. Adrian's knees nearly buckled. She looked so small. Adrian, she whispered, barely audible. Her voice was so faint it was almost air. He rushed to her side, clutching her hand. It was cold. Too cold. I'm here. I'm right here. Hold on for me, Bella. Please. She tried to smile but only managed a twitch of her lips. Don't let them die. Adrian's throat locked. The words cut deeper than any wound. Tears stung his eyes as he pressed his forehead to hers. Stop. Don't say that. You're not leaving me. You hear me? You can't. Her eyes fluttered, exhaustion pulling her under. Still, her lips moved. Promise me. The monitors beeped faster, shrill. A nurse's voice rang out, blood pressure dropping. We need a decision, now. A doctor stepped forward, mask hiding all emotion, but his words mercilessly sharp. Mr. Holt, we cannot save them all. We either operate to save your wife or to deliver the babies. You must choose now. The room froze around Adrian. His ears rang. Isabella's fingers tightened weakly around his, as if pouring the last of her strength into him. Save them. Adrian felt his chest split open. His empire, his billions, his power, useless. Here he was, a man stripped bare before fate. His wife on one side, his unborn children on the other. No. His voice broke. He shook his head like a man refusing the executioner's blade. You can't ask me to do this. Don't make me do this. The doctor's gaze hardened. If you don't decide, you'll lose them all. Adrian turned back to Isabella, desperation clawing at him. Bella, listen to me. I can't lose you. I won't. Don't ask me for this. Don't make me. His voice cracked, and he gripped her face in trembling hands. I'd rather live childless than in a world without you. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a brief, flickering moment, love shone there. But then she shook her head, slow, fragile. Then you don't know me at all." The words were a knife straight to his chest. Her hand slipped from his. Her eyes closed. The monitor blared in warning. "Code blue," a nurse shouted. "She's crashing." Chaos erupted in the room. Doctors moved fast, shouts overlapping. Adrian stumbled backward, his heart tearing open as Isabella's body convulsed under the shock pads. He couldn't breathe. His love, his wife, the only woman he had ever given his soul to, slipping away. And yet, her last words echoed like a curse. "Then you don't know me at all." A doctor grabbed Adrian by the shoulders, forcing him to focus. "Mr. Holt, this is your final chance. Do we prioritize her, or the triplets?" Adrian's lips trembled. His chest heaved. His voice came out strangled, almost unrecognizable. "Her. Save her." Evelyn's voice cut like a whip from the doorway. "Adrian!" He turned, seeing his sister's face twisted with anguish. "You'll kill her either way," she shouted. "But if you take the children from her, you'll destroy her soul, even if she survives. Is that what you want? To watch her live as a shell because you were too afraid to let go?" Her words struck like thunder. Adrian faltered, eyes darting from Isabella's convulsing body to the surgical team, to the swelling belly that carried 3 fragile lives. The truth carved into him. Saving her but losing them wouldn't be saving her at all. It would be damning her. Tears spilled down his cheeks as he whispered the words that ripped him apart. "Save the babies." The doctors moved instantly. "Prepare for emergency delivery." Adrian stumbled backward until his back hit the cold wall. His body shook violently as the room blurred before him. They were cutting into her. He heard the sharp cries of urgency, the suction, the sterile tools, the endless blips of machines. And then, a cry. Thin, fragile, but alive. One baby. Another cry, weak but piercing. "Ooh." A third, smaller, struggling. The doctors moved fast, shouting for oxygen. Adrian's legs gave out. He sank to the floor, hands covering his face, sobbing harder than he ever had in his life. His children were alive. But Isabella. The room's chaos dulled into a hum in his ears as he stared at her still body on the table. Her chest didn't rise. Her skin was too pale. For the first time, Adrian Holt begged. Not the world, not business, not fate. He begged the universe itself. "Please," he whispered through his tears. "Don't take her from me. Please, God, don't take her." But the silence that followed was unbearable. What would hurt more, living without the person you love most, or living with them knowing you destroyed what they loved most? Comment your thoughts below. The room was quiet now. Too quiet. Machines still beeped faintly, steady rhythms that felt like mockery against the war just fought. The smell of antiseptic lingered in the air, sharp and merciless. Adrian sat slumped in a hard plastic chair in the recovery wing, his head bowed into his hands. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, his knuckles raw from where he'd slammed them against the wall when they wheeled her away. He could still hear it. The doctors shouting. The cutting. The cries of 3 lives pulled into the world. And her silence. God, her silence. The door creaked open. Evelyn stepped in quietly, her face drawn and pale. She carried a blanket folded neatly in her arms. Adrian didn't lift his head. He couldn't. "They're stable," Evelyn whispered. Her voice was soft, but weighted with exhaustion. "The babies are small, fragile, but they're breathing on their own now." She paused, watching him. "Do you want to see them?" Adrian's throat tightened. He shook his head slowly. "Not yet." The words tasted like betrayal. His children were alive, alive because he had chosen them. And yet, he couldn't bear to look at them. Because every breath they took felt like a dagger twisting in his chest. When he finally rose, hours later, the world outside the window was gray with dawn. He moved like a man carved from stone down the corridor, toward the private ICU where Isabella lay. The sight stopped him cold. She was so still. Too still. Her skin pale, lips cracked, hair tangled across the pillow. Machines surrounded her, keeping the rhythm her body had nearly abandoned. Adrian stood at the threshold, unable to cross it. For the first time in his life, he felt afraid to move forward. Afraid that if he touched her, she'd dissolve into the air like smoke. Evelyn's hand brushed his arm gently. "She's still here," she murmured. "She made it through the night." But was she? Adrian couldn't tell. She looked like a ghost already. He finally stepped in, each step slow, deliberate. He sat beside her bed, his large hand trembling as he brushed a lock of hair from her forehead. "Bella," his voice cracked into a whisper. "I did what you asked. I saved them. They're alive. But please, you have to wake up. Don't leave me in this emptiness." Her chest rose faintly. Machines beeped. But she didn't answer. Adrian spent hours at her side. Sometimes holding her hand. Sometimes pacing. Sometimes whispering promises into the still air. Promises he wasn't sure anyone heard. He remembered the fight that had torn them apart years ago. The words he'd flung in anger. The way she had walked away with tears in her eyes. He remembered the cold years that followed, burying himself in work, pretending he didn't ache for her. And now, fate had placed him here, broken, begging. A nurse entered quietly with a clipboard. "Mr. Holt, the babies are in the NICU. They need their father." Adrian clenched his jaw. "They need their mother more." The nurse hesitated, then left. His chest heaved with a sigh. He dragged his chair closer, laying his head against Isabella's hand. "I don't know how to do this without you. I don't know how to look at them and not see you. Please, Bella, don't make me raise them in a world without your laughter." Tears spilled, hot and relentless, staining the sheets under her hand. Late that night, when even the hospital seemed asleep, Adrian finally spoke the words he had never said out loud. "I was wrong." His voice was rough, broken. "I thought loving you meant controlling everything, protecting you from ever being hurt. But all it did was push you away. And tonight, I tried to do it again. I almost damned you to a life you would have hated because I couldn't bear to lose you." His lips pressed against her hand, trembling. "But I did lose you, didn't I? Even with them alive, I lost us." The silence after his confession was unbearable. No forgiveness came. No sign. Just the steady beep of machines. For the first time in his life, Adrian Holt, the man who built an empire with his will alone, felt utterly powerless. The NICU lights were dim when he finally forced himself to visit. 3 incubators lined the wall, glowing softly. Inside, 3 tiny bodies, each no bigger than his palm, squirmed faintly against their blankets. Tubes and wires ran like lifelines into their fragile forms. Adrian pressed his hand to the glass of the first incubator, his chest tightening. They were so impossibly small. And yet, they were alive. "They look like her," Evelyn whispered behind him, her voice shaking. "The way their noses scrunch, their cheeks. It's Isabella." Adrian swallowed hard. His vision blurred. But instead of joy, he felt crushing weight. Each of their breaths, each tiny movement, reminded him of the choice that had damned him. He loved them already. But he could not separate their existence from her absence. He turned and left, shoulders bowed, unable to stay. Night bled into morning. Days blurred. Adrian lived in the hall between 2 worlds. The NICU, where 3 fragile lives grew stronger, and the ICU, where Isabella floated between life and death. He barely ate. He barely slept. His empire, his billions, his reputation, none of it mattered here. All that mattered was whether she would open her eyes again. And with each passing hour of silence, the fear grew, maybe she never would. The rain had started again outside, tapping gently against the wide hospital windows. Adrian hadn't noticed at first. His world had shrunk to this corridor, these rooms, the scent of antiseptic that clung to his skin like sin. It had been 4 days since the surgery. 4 days since Isabella slipped into a silence so heavy it crushed the air from his lungs. He stood at her bedside again, tall frame bent forward, elbows braced against his knees. His eyes, bloodshot and rimmed with exhaustion, searched her face as if a twitch of her lips, a flicker of her eyelids could redeem him. But she lay still. He reached for her hand. It was warm, at least. Not the cold stone of death. Yet too limp, too lifeless, compared to the fiery woman he had once known. "Do you remember, Bella?" he murmured, voice hoarse. "That winter we got stranded in Vermont? Snowed in, no heat, no staff. Just us and a pile of blankets. You made me pancakes on a rusted skillet because you said billionaires need to eat like humans sometimes." He gave a short, breathless laugh. The memory carved through him like glass. "You told me then that love wasn't about grand gestures or empires. It was about survival together. About waking up side by side, even in the coldest of nights." His hand trembled around hers. "I didn't listen. I thought if I gave you castles and diamonds, it would erase my flaws. But what you needed was just me. And I was never brave enough to give you that." The machines answered with indifferent beeps. That evening, Evelyn entered with something bundled in a hospital blanket. She hesitated at the door, watching him. "They're stronger," she whispered. "One of them cried today." Adrian's head jerked up. His heart clenched painfully. "Cried." Evelyn nodded. "Just a faint sound. But real. You should come see." For a moment, he wanted to refuse again. To hide here, drowning in guilt beside Isabella's silent form. But something in Evelyn's eyes, a plea, a demand, forced him to stand. The NICU hummed with low lights and mechanical sighs. Evelyn led him to the incubator where his smallest daughter lay. She was swaddled tightly, her tiny fists tucked under her chin. And then, as if sensing him, a sound rose, thin, trembling, but alive. A cry. Adrian froze. The world stilled around him. That cry pierced through the fortress of his grief, cutting straight to his chest. His hand pressed against the incubator glass. "She sounds." His throat closed. He couldn't finish. "Like Isabella?" Evelyn asked softly. He nodded once, unable to speak. Later that night, after Evelyn convinced him to rest in the family waiting suite, Adrian stumbled across something he hadn't expected. A folded envelope tucked in his overnight bag, in handwriting he knew as well as his own. It was Isabella's. His hands shook as he tore it open. "Adrian," it began, the loops of her letters steady, careful. "If you're reading this, it means I was afraid enough to prepare for the worst. I don't want to scare you, but I know the risks of carrying 3 children. I couldn't tell you before, because you'd insist on protecting me. But I need you to know something, in case I don't make it." He swallowed hard, vision blurring. "Whatever happens, choose them. Choose the babies. They are pieces of us. They are love, made flesh. And even if I can't be here, I will be in them. Every smile, every cry, every breath, they'll carry me to you." Tears fell onto the page, smudging her ink. "And Adrian, don't let guilt steal them from you. Don't let the shadows of our mistakes keep you from loving them. Or yourself. Please. Promise me." The letter slipped from his hand, drifting onto the carpet. Adrian pressed his fists to his forehead, breaking. She had known. She had trusted him to make the unbearable choice. And she had forgiven him before he even acted. The next morning, he sat at her side again, letter clutched in his breast pocket. "I read it," he whispered to her still form. "The letter. You always knew me better than I knew myself. You told me to choose them. And I did. But I can't." His voice cracked. "I can't do it without you." He bowed his head, forehead pressing against her hand. His body shook. Then, faint. So faint he thought he imagined it. Her fingers twitched. His head shot up, eyes wide, searching her face. Nothing. Stillness. Had he dreamt it? Was grief twisting him into delusion? He leaned closer, heart thundering. "Bella, was that you?" The machines continued their indifferent rhythm. Her chest rose and fell. But her hand, he swore it, moved once more. The tiniest flicker of life, as if reminding him, "I'm still here." That night, for the first time, Adrian allowed himself to stay in the NICU longer than a few minutes. He stood between the 3 incubators, looking down at his children. 1 boy, 2 girls. All impossibly small, impossibly fragile. Yet breathing. Surviving. He rested his palm against the glass. "Your mother's fighting," he whispered. "And so will I. For you. For her. For us." The words surprised him. They felt foreign and natural all at once. For the first time, they weren't laced with guilt alone. They carried resolve. Resolve to wait. To fight. To hope. Because maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't over yet. The hospital at night felt like a city of ghosts. Adrian walked the corridors alone, his footsteps echoing against the polished floors. Every turn seemed to lead him back to the same 2 places, the NICU glowing with fragile new life, and Isabella's room, dim and suffocating with silence. The letter pressed against his chest like a brand. He had read it 10 times now, each word a knife and a bomb. Her plea echoed in his skull. Choose them. Don't let guilt steal them from you. But still, he asked himself, what if she never wakes up? Would he be strong enough to keep that promise if she left him behind? Isabella's room smelled faintly of lavender, a nurse's attempt to soften the sterility. He sat at her side again, weary but restless. Her skin was pale, lips parted slightly as the machines breathed with her. He had memorized every inch of her face by now. He could sketch her eyelids, the curve of her jaw, the way her hair curled against the pillow. "I saw them today," he whispered, his voice low, raw. "Your daughters. Your son. They're fighting, Bella. Just like you. Do you hear me? They're fighters because you are." The silence pressed on him. Then, so faint he thought it must be another illusion, her eyelashes trembled. He froze. His breath caught. Her eyes did not open. But the movement was there, delicate as the flicker of a candle in the wind. Adrian surged to his feet, fumbling for the nurse's call button. Evelyn appeared moments later, steady as always, scanning the monitors. "Sometimes," she said cautiously, "there are reflexes. It doesn't always mean—" "It means something," Adrian interrupted, fierce. "It has to." Evelyn studied him for a moment, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't lose yourself in maybes, Adrian. Hope can heal, or it can break." When she left, he turned back to Isabella, gripping her hand with both of his. "You hear me, Bella? Don't you dare let this be a reflex. Don't you leave me guessing. Fight. Fight your way back." Hours bled into dawn. The rain stopped, leaving the city washed and still. Adrian sat forward, forehead pressed to her hand. He spoke into the quiet, words he had swallowed for years. "I loved you the day I met you," he admitted. "I loved you when you were too stubborn to let me carry your books. I loved you when you told me I was too proud for my own good. I loved you when we fought. I loved you when we broke. And God help me, I love you now, even if you never open your eyes again." His chest heaved. The words had cost him everything and freed him in the same breath. "If you wake up, if you give me another chance, I swear I'll spend every day making it right. No empires. No pride. Just us. That's all I want." The machines hummed. The silence swallowed his confession whole. But for the first time, Adrian felt lighter. He had nothing left to hide from her. Later that morning, Evelyn approached him in the NICU, her expression brighter than usual. "They're stabilizing," she said. "Your daughters are gaining weight. Your son's lungs are stronger. It's still a long road, but they're proving resilient." Adrian exhaled, a shaky laugh breaking through his chest. He pressed his palm to the incubator, watching the smallest girl shift in her swaddle. "They have your mother's spirit," he whispered. "Stubborn as hell." Evelyn gave him a look, soft but edged. "They need you to keep going, Adrian. Not just to hover. To live. That's what Isabella would want." Her words landed like a stone in his chest. He had been living in limbo, clinging to the edge of guilt and waiting for fate to crush him. But perhaps, just perhaps, living meant holding both grief and hope at once. That night, he returned to Isabella. The air in the room felt different, lighter, somehow, though nothing had changed. He took her hand, thumb stroking over her knuckles. "I don't know if you can hear me," he murmured. "But if you're fighting your way back, don't stop. I'm here. I'll wait." For a moment, nothing. Then, her lips parted, just slightly. The faintest sound, like the shadow of a sigh, slipped from her throat. Adrian's heart stopped. "Bella." His voice cracked as he leaned closer. "Bella, can you hear me?" The monitors continued their steady rhythm, but her chest rose differently now, less mechanical, more alive. Her eyelashes fluttered once, twice. His grip on her hand tightened, desperate, trembling. "Come back to me. Please. Come back." The faintest crease touched her brow, as if she were straining against the weight of silence itself. And for the first time in days, Adrian felt certain she was not gone. She was fighting. If you were Adrian, would you cling to the faint signs as proof Isabella is returning, or guard your heart against disappointment? Which choice feels stronger, hope or self-protection? Comment below. The first thing Adrian noticed was the sound. It wasn't the monotonous hum of machines anymore. It was irregular, alive, fractured like a melody someone was trying to remember. He looked up from his chair at Isabella's bedside, where he had been dozing with her hand still locked in his. Her breathing had changed. It was softer, deeper, not the shallow tug of mechanical assistance. The ventilator hissed in rhythm, but now it seemed to be following her instead of leading. Adrian's chest tightened. He rose slowly, afraid that moving too fast would break the fragile moment. Her eyelids trembled again. "Bella." His voice cracked, rough from days without rest. He bent close, his thumb brushing gently across her hand. "If you hear me, it's time. Come back." For a long heartbeat, there was nothing. And then, her lips parted. A rasp of breath came through. One word formed, so weak it was almost swallowed by the machines. "Adrian." The sound ripped through him like fire through dry grass. His knees buckled, and he nearly collapsed to the floor, clutching her hand tighter than ever. "I'm here. I'm right here," he whispered, his forehead pressing to her palm. "Don't stop now. Please, don't stop now." Her eyes fluttered open, hazy, unfocused. They searched the room before finding him. The faintest smile ghosted across her face. "You stayed." Tears blurred his vision. He let out a broken laugh, kissing her hand. "I'll never leave again. Never." The room came alive with motion. Nurses, Evelyn rushing in, the low tones of medical instructions. But for Adrian, the world had narrowed to a single point, Isabella's gaze anchoring him in place. Evelyn checked the monitors, her face calm but her voice steady with quiet triumph. "She's stabilizing. This is good. Very good." Adrian barely heard her. He was tracing the back of Isabella's hand with trembling fingers, whispering promises she was only half conscious enough to hear. "You fought your way back," he breathed. "Just like I knew you would." Her lips moved again, the words faint but clear enough. "The babies." Adrian smiled through tears. "They're here. They're fighting too. They're beautiful, Bella. You'll see them soon." A tear slipped from the corner of her eye. Relief, love, and exhaustion painted her face. She drifted back into a lighter sleep, but this time, Adrian knew it wasn't the heavy silence of coma. It was rest. Real rest. Once she was stable again, Evelyn guided Adrian gently out into the hallway. He had refused to leave for days, his body worn thin, but now his legs felt like water. "She's not out of the woods," Evelyn cautioned softly. "But she's here. You gave her something to hold on to." Adrian pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes, trying to stop the tears. "I almost lost her. I almost." "But you didn't," Evelyn said firmly. "And now you have a choice. You can keep drowning in guilt, or you can start building the life she fought to come back to." Her words struck deep. Adrian nodded, though the weight of them nearly crushed him. For the first time in years, he felt the possibility of redemption stretching before him like dawn breaking after endless night. He glanced back at Isabella's room, her pale form resting peacefully. Then toward the NICU, where the triplets were waiting. 2 paths. 1 future. For the first time, he believed they could merge. The next morning, Adrian walked into Isabella's room with his heart hammering. She was awake this time, not fully strong, but propped up slightly on pillows, her hair a tangled halo around her pale face. When her eyes lifted and caught his, it was like being struck all over again by a truth he had nearly lost forever. "You look terrible," she whispered, her voice hoarse but tinged with the faintest teasing. Adrian laughed, broken and relieved. "I haven't left your side in days. I wasn't about to waste time shaving when you—" His voice faltered, his throat tightening. "When I thought I'd never hear you again." Her gaze softened. She reached, weakly, for his hand. He rushed to take it, kissing her knuckles. "You stayed," she repeated, her voice steadier this time. "Why, Adrian? After everything between us?" The question pierced him. His throat closed, but he forced the truth out anyway. "Because I can't lose you twice," he said, his voice breaking. "I built walls, Bella. I buried myself in work and power, thinking it would fill the void. But nothing ever did. You were the only thing that ever made me feel alive. And when you left, I thought I could endure it. I was wrong." Tears filled her eyes. "You let ambition come before me. Before us. That's why I left." "I know," he whispered, anguish etched into his features. "And I would spend every day for the rest of my life proving I learned that lesson. If you'll let me." Silence stretched. The beeping of the monitors filled the room like a second heartbeat. Then Isabella gave a faint, trembling smile. "You say that now, when I'm weak and tethered to machines." Adrian cupped her face gently, brushing away a tear with his thumb. "No. I say it because nearly losing you made me remember who I am with you. And I will not waste another chance." Her lips quivered, and a sob escaped as she leaned into his palm. Hours later, Evelyn entered with a nurse cradling 3 impossibly tiny bundles. Adrian's breath caught. Isabella's hand tightened around his. "Bella," Evelyn said softly, "your children are strong enough now. Just for a few minutes." Tears streamed down Isabella's face as the nurse carefully placed one fragile infant against her chest. The baby let out a weak cry, and Isabella gasped, overwhelmed. "They're so small," she whispered. Her hands trembled as she touched the downy head. "Adrian, we made them." Adrian's heart cracked wide open. He leaned over, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Yes, we did. And they've been waiting for you." The second baby was laid in his arms. For a moment, he froze, terrified he might break the fragile life he held. But when the tiny hand curled instinctively around his finger, something inside him shattered. His voice was raw. "I don't deserve them. I don't deserve you. But I swear to you, Isabella, I'll fight every day to be worthy." Isabella looked at him, her face streaked with tears but filled with a glow he hadn't seen in years. "Then maybe we can try again." The third child was placed gently between them, and in that fragile circle, mother, father, and 3 newborns, the air felt different. It wasn't the sterile hum of machines anymore. It was life. Family. For a long time, neither spoke. Their tears did the speaking, their trembling touches filled the silence. Finally, Isabella whispered, "I thought I was dying. And all I wanted in those moments was to see your face. Even after everything." Adrian bent his head against hers, his voice breaking. "Then let me spend the rest of our lives making sure the first face you see every morning is mine. No boardroom, no ambition, nothing else matters." Her lips curved into a tired but genuine smile. "We'll see if you can keep that promise." But in her eyes, still tired, still bruised by suffering, was a flicker of hope. The sun spilled gold through the hospital windows when Isabella was finally strong enough to be wheeled into the NICU. Adrian walked beside her, his hand never leaving hers, as the nurse pushed her slowly into the room. Inside, 3 incubators glowed softly, tiny miracles fighting for breath. Isabella's eyes filled instantly. "They're so perfect," she whispered, her voice breaking. Adrian bent close to her, his own throat tight. "So are you. You gave them life, Bella. You gave me life again." A nurse gently lifted one of the babies and placed her into Isabella's arms. She was stronger now, still small, but her cry was louder, insistent. Isabella pressed her cheek to the baby's head, sobbing softly. Adrian leaned in, resting his forehead against Isabella's. "Do you see, Bella? You didn't have to choose. You and them, you all lived. And now I'll spend every day proving I can be the man you and these children need." Her tears fell freely, but she smiled through them. "Then let's stop surviving, Adrian. Let's start living. Together." Later that night, when the babies were resting and the hospital ward was finally quiet, Adrian pulled a chair close to Isabella's bed. He had something in his hand, a small, velvet box. Her eyes widened. "Adrian!" He opened it, revealing not the diamond spectacle she remembered from years ago, but a simple ring, elegant, understated, etched with 3 small stones. "For them," he said softly. "For you. For us. I don't want to marry you for appearances, or because the world expects it. I want to marry you because I can't breathe without knowing you're mine, and I'm yours. Forever." Her breath caught, her hands trembling. "Adrian, after everything." He silenced her with a trembling kiss on her knuckles. "Especially after everything. Because now I know what losing you feels like. And I'll never risk it again." Her lips curved into a radiant smile, tears streaming. "Then yes. 1,000 times, yes." The weeks blurred into healing. Isabella regained her strength, the babies grew stronger, and for the first time, Adrian left his office empty, his empire waiting while he held bottles, changed diapers, and watched Isabella sleep with their children curled against her chest. One evening, as twilight bathed the nursery at home, Adrian stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching Isabella rock their smallest daughter. She hummed softly, her eyes heavy but her smile serene. Adrian whispered from the doorway, his voice thick with awe. "You saved me, Bella. Not just them. Not just yourself. Me." She looked up, her gaze locking with his. "No, Adrian. We saved each other." He crossed the room, wrapping his arms around her and the baby, burying his face in her hair. The other 2 infants stirred in their cribs, soft cries filling the air, but for Adrian, it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. This was what he had almost thrown away. This was what he would fight for every single day. And as Isabella leaned into him, their children surrounding them, the past was finally laid to rest. Adrian pressed a kiss to Isabella's forehead, whispering words that mirrored the moment she had opened her eyes after the coma. "I'm here. I'll always be here." This time, her smile was strong, certain. And in her arms, 3 new lives carried that promise forward. Do you believe near-death experiences make people love harder? Or is it the choice they make afterward that truly defines love? Share your heart in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else's healing. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.